Hi. So, this is obviously a way different setup than y'all are probably used to seeing me in. Yeah. So, as you could probably tell by what's behind me here, we're doing a recap. I've wanted to do one of these since I saw the Jenny Nicholson recap of The Vampire Diaries, and obviously undeniably, I love Mike's Mike as a channel, and I absolutely love the recaps that he has been doing for all of these different shows. Anyway, I have chosen to do this about a show that means rather a lot to me, and has meant a lot to me for a very long time, and that is Charmed. So, the thing about Charmed as a show is it's everything to me and I love it. I love it very much. We're obviously today going to be starting with season 1. I This is not the season I started with when I started watching the show. A little bit of my history with the show, I started watching it when season 5 was actively airing. I fell in love with it like immediately. And the thing that I think really captures people about this show, the show, by the way, is functionally just about three sisters who discover that they're witches and have to protect the innocent people of the world from the larger forces of evil, while also attempting to maintain having a regular life in some way, shape, or form. Hilarity ensues because girl, girl. Anyway, oh, actually, there are certain aspects of the first season that I have decided to skip over for various reasons. We will get there. We'll get there when we get there. But, like, there are certain episodes that I have straight up entirely chosen to skip over because they weren't that important or relevant. One major resource in making this video happen at all is the lovely, the fabulous, Charmed Wiki page, which has a lot of information on it that I think is genuinely amazing. I wanted to just shout them out because that is a wildly well maintained website. So much really good information on there. So definitely, if y'all are interested in looking up some cool lore and whatever, check it out there. I think it's personally quite fascinating. So, let's see here. Oh God, I forgot to introduce myself. Hi everyone. Hi, I'm JV, aka Jade Violet, aka Red Black Golden. I am a trans woman who likes talking about media and has a lot of feelings about media things and likes to talk about them. My pronouns are she and they, in case you were curious. If you want to follow along with this journey in a more deeper way and maybe even see early cuts of each section of these videos, you can do so by joining me on dear old Patreon. We're also going to be doing some watch-alongs of some episodes. I will watch along, and there are also going to be episodes that I, for certain tiers, will actually just straight up watch with y'all. There are going to be ones that, rather than me watch it with you, I will record me watching the show and then basically give you what amounts to a commentary as we're going through. So that could be fun. That could be fun and exciting and interesting. Please, if you would like to do so, check that out. I'm going to try to make those watch-alongs that I do and then comment on, and like, yeah, those will be available. The VODs for all of those basically will be available. Other ones will be available at slightly higher tiers, and again, you can get your name in the credits of these episodes, which I think is also a great thing. And also, it'll support a thing looking less janky than this. I own that this looks a little bit janky. And I own that I right now have no makeup on. I have zero makeup on my face, which is not how I want to appear on this channel generally. But honestly, I've been putting off recording this, and if I had to put it off to put on makeup, it wasn't going to get done. I have executive function issues, and I do very much want to get this done and recorded. So, we are going to go over this show and we're going to talk about different aspects of the show that I think are interesting and different things that I think are worth noting. We are obviously going in season order as you do with these things. We are going to start today with season 1. The first section of this, the very first episode, is going to be pretty in-depth because it is the pilot, and I think that that's important. I will try to cover different sections here and there. I'm also aiming to have this video not be the longest in the world, because those tend to be a little bit difficult to do. Also, there are going to be very, very, very few clips from the show in the video. And the reasoning for this is I don't want to get hit with a copyright anything. If I'm being completely real with you, I don't want to have to deal with that. So we're not putting clips in every single minute of the day. Expect some outfits periodically here and there. Honestly, I'm gonna do a really cute face for the second half of the season 1, just so y'all have something to look at other than just this. Anyway, I think with all of that out of the way... Oh, actually, sorry, one other thing. So, obviously with this, and with a show that centers on witchcraft, there are a lot of people for whom there are going to be religious terms that are used in this episode. And I want to just first of all shout y'all out. Shout out to the Wiccans. Shout out to the general pagans, overall the neo-pagans specifically, but also them old school pagans too. And specifically from me, shout out to the hoodoos, the voodoos, all y'all. That's my camp. That's where I am as well. I grew up in the Unitarian Church, which is why I don't have any religious trauma. We can get into that at a later date. But I also, generally speaking, in terms of my own personal religious practices, I would identify myself as pagan because that feels the most accurate to me. Technically speaking, it would be neo-pagan, sure, in that I just generally vaguely worship the earth and the things that come from the earth. That's just where we're at, y'all. That's just who I am as a person. I personally don't have that much of an issue with the way that this show chooses to fictionalize aspects of the pagan faith. This is a urban fantasy show. Urban fantasy show's gonna urban fantasy. There's gonna be a lot of stuff here that is not obviously accurate to paganism and the pagan faith, specifically Wicca and the Wiccan faith, even though they invoke the name Wicca several times. However, if you want to learn a little bit more about witchcraft and whatnot, Kazro just did an amazing video that I love that I will put right here. Here's a little screenshot of it right here that y'all can check out. Please go give Kazro a whole lot of love because I absolutely love their channel and I love everything that they make. I thought that video was very interesting and I thought it was well done. Another one that I think is very interesting, this show is actually, like, it doesn't seem it based on the images that are up here right now, except for this dude right here. This is a, honestly, pretty diverse show in a lot of ways. The main characters are not necessarily the most diverse. We have 3 brunettes. We just have 3 brunette white women at the center of this show. However, there are lots of side characters and characters around the sisters who are from various different backgrounds. And why that is important and why I'm bringing that up right now is that y'all know that I'm covering the 1998, the one that started in 1998, not the one that started a couple of years ago and then immediately flopped. Yikes. And to that end, I want to recommend one other video that you can go check out. I will link these below because I think that they're fascinating, but this one in particular is very, very cool to me, and it is by Intellectual Media. It is by Lexual. Shout out to you, Lexual. And it is a black girl's guide to witchcraft, hoodoo, conjure, all that. Very cool. I loved that one, and it sparked something in me, and I really liked it. That's all. I just wanted to shout her out because I love her channel as well. So, now that all of that is out of the way, and we can just get right on into it, divas, let's get started with Episode 1, Something Wicca This Way Comes. Air date October 7th, 1998. Fun fact for y'all, I was 8 years old when this show initially came out. So, our episode starts with a witch, who I don't have up on here because, let's be real, she's not going to last very long. But I will put up an image of her right here. Boom. Her name is Serena, and she is an absolute girl boss. We love to see it. She is a witch. She's not one of the sisters, obviously, but she is a witch who can light candles with her finger, which is, by the way, low-grade pyrokinesis. Technically speaking, this pyrokinesis is used later on in the episode in a way that is a lot larger, which would indicate that she was actually more powerful than just lighting candles. But that's our first sort of display of the powers in this show. The powers in the show are rather interesting, honestly. She's got a hairless little pussy cat named Kit, who we will see a lot throughout this. And actually, fun fact, Kit's the first one that appears on this lovely sign. There's Kit right there. Everyone say hi to Kit. We love Kit. Kit is amazing. So Kit is her familiar. Familiar is just a animal that sort of is around and acts as both an extension of an individual witch and also as just an animal companion to the witch. That's just how familiars work in general. Yeah. So Miss Serena is doing a little bit of a protection ritual. Now, pro tip for y'all out there who are young witches, do not skip this step in your rituals. Do not skip the protection circle. Do that first. You always have to do that first. It is important for your practice. It also, one of the other reasons that it is helpful to do so, is that it is a meditative practice. Gets your head in the game, gets everything started. And also, generally speaking, protects you from bad shit. So, make sure you do that. Oh, also shout out to this little piece of gold jewelry. It's that little symbol there, but in necklace form. I love it. It's my fave. And anyway, I just wanted to shout out this cute little necklace. Also because I had to tie the back of this necklace up so that it would stay up. So it's going to now slip and fall out of frame. Because of course it is. But I just wanted y'all to know that it is still here. Right next to my heart. Because I love this show. Anyway. Now, Serena's little protection spell. I'm going to go through and read some of these spells because I think that they're fun and I like them. Augur de Gome, Augur de Gome, Ancient One of the Earth so deep, Master of moon and sun, I shield you in my Wiccan way, here in my circle round, asking you to protect this space and offer your sun force down. It's very pretty, very lovely. It also does not work. So, yeah. It doesn't work because Serena is immediately murdered by a warlock that we don't see, but that she clearly recognizes in a way that feels a little bit flirty and a little bit romantic. Yeah. Not good. Murder. Murder is bad. Fun fact, murder is bad. Anyway, we finally cut to, and we get to meet our sisters, or at least we get to meet two of them in this first opening scene. Let us start with the first one that we wind up seeing, which is Miss Holly Marie Combs right here, playing Piper. Piper, played by Holly Marie Combs. You might recognize her. If you are older than me, you would recognize her from Picket Fences, which was a sitcom, I believe. I don't know. I didn't look up Picket Fences, girl. Girl, I ain't got time to look up Picket Fences. Y'all can do that on your own. And if you are younger than me, or if in fact you are the same age as me or younger, you might have shown up here because you enjoy Pretty Little Liars and you enjoy Mike's recap of Pretty Little Liars. And you would then recognize Miss Thing as Ella Montgomery from Pretty Little Liars, who's Aria's mother. Oh, we love that for her. Here's the tea about Miss Holly Marie Combs. Miss Holly has the best eyebrows in the game. I don't know how to properly explain this, but one of my very first sort of bouts of seeking gender euphoria was actually buying a little eyebrow hair trimmer, one of them little personal hair trimmers, and going at my eyebrows and curving the arch just so. But it's not just the arch, it's the fact that her eyebrow goes it does an almost this type of shape on this part, and then it gets to a little point and then curves outward like that. That's the eyebrow shape I still go with whenever I need to, like, trim my eyebrows. Because I just think it looks so pretty and very cunty. Love it. Amazing. Best eyebrows in the biz right there. Love it. We also meet Miss Thing over here, Prue. So Prue is the oldest sister, and she is played by Shannon Doherty. Shannon Doherty, you might also know her as Brenda Walsh from literally every iteration of Beverly Hills 90210. Yeah, Beverly Hills 90210 fame right there. I'm gonna just get this out of the way now, which is I don't really like season one Prue. She's not my favorite. And I think part of that, there are several reasons for this. One of them is that I am the oldest child in my family, and I know the like level of responsibility that gets put on the oldest child in typical family dynamics or whatever. The thing is, you don't have to be a bitch about it. And like, she very much is. She's very. We'll get to it in a minute. We will get to it in a minute. Like, the type of personality that she has, we will get to it because I have a very cute little breakdown of the three sisters right here. It's coming, honey. Don't you worry. So, Miss Piper is getting back from a job interview, and Miss Prue is fixing the chandelier in the front room of the Halliwell Manor that you are all going to love and recognize. Y'all are going to recognize this manor. Like, you'll see it in the back of your mind at all times. The manor is one of the set pieces that doesn't change throughout all of the seasons. Is so cool. I love the manor. It's so pretty. I want to live in a house that on the interior looks a little bit like the Halliwell Manor. I do. In the comments, write if you would live in the Halliwell Manor as well. I would love to see it. So, Prue is attempting to fix the chandelier. It is vaguely explained a little bit later on that the house that they live in is their Graham's house. Their Graham, however, more recently passed away, and the house was left to the three sisters, and that is why they live there. That is why these two specifically live there. Piper is trying to get a chef job at a restaurant. Miss Piper is, in fact, a cook, is a chef, and her boyfriend, Jeremy, who may or may not be pictured. Whatever, fuck it. He's right here. Jeremy's right here. Yeah. I'll pop a picture up here that's not so much of a spoilery image, but whatever. So, Jeremy, her boyfriend, is trying to help her out with this job interview and is therefore going to leave her a bottle of port at the house that might just be the ticket to getting into the next phase of her interviews. Fun fact, if you don't know what port is Portuguese wine. I don't know what I thought it was other than that, but port is Portuguese wine. We love it. We love learning things. The more you know. It is usually a sweet red wine, by the way. Just added little fun thing. It's usually a sweet one, and it's recommended to go with desserts. And is probably one of the things that I might be drinking later. Y'all might catch me in here drinking port. And if you catch me in here drinking port, mind your goddamn business. I am tired. I am a tired 33-year-old human being. Anyway, so for some reason, there is a spirit board that they found in the house, and this spirit board says, "The power of 3 will set you free." It's written right on there by their mom, who has been dead since the girls were little kids. Prue and Piper talk a little bit of shit about their younger sister, Phoebe, and then boom, we are in titles. So, Miss Phoebe is played by Alyssa Milano. You might know Alyssa Milano from, honestly, a lot of different things. She's been in a lot of different things over the years. You might know her from literally any of them. I don't know your life. I don't know what you watch. I know you watching this channel. Girl. So, yeah, Miss Phoebe is very interesting to me. So, one of the things that is a common trope in media where you have a sort of trio dynamic like this one, One of these concepts of different types of trios that you can have, one of them is called the Freudian trio. The Freudian trio consists of the emotional id, the stoic superego, and the middle grounded ego. So, Prue is the superego, very stoic, rational, quote unquote. Yeah. Miss Piper is the ego, and Miss Phoebe is the emotional id. Or at least that's how they are, at least during this first season. One of them is seen as being the most responsible, and that would be Miss Prue. One of them is seen as just the glue holding everyone together, and that is Miss Piper. And the other one is a free spirit who just is like here to have a good time. And that is Miss Phoebe. Sure. This holds true for at the very least the first 3 seasons, and then the dynamic sort of shifts a little bit. If you know the spoiler at the end of season 3 that changed the dynamic, we're not talking about that right now, Diva, and do not spoil it in the comments for anyone else. Don't do it. No, no, no. Don't do it. No. Oh, God. Anyway, so we then cut to 2 cops who are investigating the murder of Serena. So Serena was, we saw in the first scene, Serena was murdered by someone who was off screen. I am going to break it to you now. It was a warlock, and it was Jeremy. Shocker, shocker, shocker. Surprise, surprise. Jeremy is in fact a killer. That's why that image is there. We'll get to it. So we then meet 2 cops, because of course there are cops in this fucking show. They're always around, but they're very much present this season. They get a little bit dropped later because the cops just become less of a problem the more experienced the girls are and the more allies they gain. But because they are recurring characters, they are in fact on the board. So Andy, who's right up here next to Miss Prue, for reasons that we will get to in a little bit, is one of the investigators and one of the officers. Andy thinks that the murder had something to do with witches and witchcraft. And he's gone to like a store that like told him a little bit more about witchcraft and a little bit more about what was going on the scene, including the fact that the lady was stabbed with an athame, which I honestly don't know if athame is the correct pronunciation or not. It's what we're going to go with because it's the way I've always thought that it was pronounced. But the athame is a small double-edged ritual knife. Fun fact. In how they're usually intended to work, they're normally used as, like I said, a ritual knife, not for like stabbing people or drawing blood or whatever. That's not their purpose. Their purpose is splitting wind, I believe splitting wind and other sort of things that involve like cuts that you need to make during a ritual. For example, if you have to tie things together using a piece of string, like so, you would then, if you were, say, binding 2 things together, you would do that, and then you would use the ritual knife to sever the end, or if you were trying to separate ties from somebody, you would have a piece like that is already tied, and you would sever it there. That is what the ritual dagger purpose, that's what it's for, basically. Anyway, so one of the things that they find as a clue on Miss Serena is the triquetra symbol, which is this one. In this show, it is a symbol of the Charmed Ones and magic sort of generally. It vaguely takes the place of the pentagram or the pentacle in a lot of ways, but it indicates the power of 3, the power of the sort of holy triad. It is also, for neo-pagans, typically is a symbol of protection, specifically the protection of the triple goddess, which is represented as Maiden, Mother, and Crone, and can appear in a lot of different sort of forms throughout different religions and different versions of paganism across the world, which is super cool. Most religions, weirdly, apparently have a triple goddess, and I always have found that fascinating, that little bit of synchronicity across different religions and across different groups. I don't know. I find it fascinating. Maybe you find it fascinating too. Who knows? Anyway, I just wanted to briefly touch on why the triquetra is right here in the center of the book. Also, at some point, I'm going to get a picture of the book and just have it up here because the book becomes like its own character in a lot of ways. And also, the book is fucking messy, girl. Messy, messy boots, this book. We'll get there, honey. We'll get there. The other fun thing about the triquetra is that you can find it. It's also known as the trefoil knot. It's the trefoil knot when the little circle, this little circle here, isn't a part of it. But it is a trefoil knot because it has three, the tre in trefoil indicates three leaves, basically. It's a 3-leaf design, and it has been found on ancient coins as far back as the 4th century BCE, which I think is fascinating. Anyway, its original origin is not really very well known, but for the purposes of the show, it represents the triple goddess and the feminine everything and protection and the power of 3. The power of 3 being the 3 sisters. So, yeah. Cutting back to the sisters, we finally meet Phoebe. She has entered the chat. Phoebe right here has entered the chat. Okay, so Miss Phoebe gets home after having lived in New York for several months. I think about 6 months. I believe at one point she was in school out there and, like, was no longer doing school. But she was living her life out there. It's a whole thing. As soon as Miss Phoebe gets home, Prue is pissed. Prue is mad that she's back because before she left, apparently there was some fuckery afoot with Prue's ex-fiance. So the thing about Prue's ex-fiance, who is in this episode and who is not up on the board, because fuck that guy, and also he's only here this one episode. He's not important. His name is Roger. So according to Prue, Prue thinks that Phoebe tried to steal Roger from her while they were engaged, except Phoebe has said that that is not the case, that Roger came onto her. And what do we do in this household? We believe victims. That is true. Roger's a slimeball. That it becomes immediately clear when we see him in a later scene. Prue, generally speaking, during this scene, behaves like an absolute fucking asshole towards her lovely sister, who has come home and is hoping for a nice, happy reunion. And Phoebe goes up to her childhood bedroom. Piper brings some food up. They talk a little bit about Piper's boyfriend, Jeremy, once again. This fucker right here. They talk a little bit about him. And after talking about him a little bit, they try to just talk about that sisterly bond and wishing that they were all close again like they were when they were little. The scene, generally speaking, cuts there, and it cuts back to the detectives for a little bit. But then it cuts back to the sisters, and the sisters have decided they're going to play with the spirit board. Prue is not about it. Prue's like, girl, let's not play with this. Like, come on now. I would like to take a moment to talk to y'all about the spirit board. I love the spirit board as a motif. The spirit board is on my wallet. I have the spirit board hanging above the door to enter my bedroom. This one is custom made, by the way, and it was made in, I believe, the Netherlands? I don't know. It's an artisan spirit board, though, and it's real fucking cute, and I love it so much. And I also have this bottle right here of Harridan vodka, who is not sponsoring this, but I love them very much. Shout out to the show Creepy, which, as a Halloween gift last year, they got me this bottle of Harridan vodka, which I love very much and have not finished most of it. But I love this bottle because it is a slightly haunted bottle of vodka, and it has this motif all over it, and a usable spirit board as part of the marketing features. Now, you might be wondering, am I nervous about having, like, these entities that are used generally in media for summoning ghosts and spirits? Am I worried to have these anywhere? Do I look worried? Darling, darling, darling. I'm not worried about ghosts and spirits at all, because the tea is, if any spirit comes through any of these boards, I I feel pity for them once they realize where they've stepped into. Oh, honey, I am not the one.
Because you're worse than whatever would walk in that door.
Exactly. I'm the evil that you should be afraid of.
So, back to the show. At one point, the board starts moving on its own and spells out the word attic. And then the power goes out. Girl, what? Very, very supernatural. There are ghosts all up in this bitch. There are ghosts in this house. There are ghosts in this house. Ha! So, all the lights go out, the girls split up, Piper and Prue go to try to restore power, but Miss Phoebe goes right on up to the attic, listening to the spirit board. So, she goes up to the attic, and she finds, boom, the Book of Shadows. Oh my god, she finds the Book of Shadows in the house. And this is, this is within 15 minutes of the show starting, so we're starting off on a good little strong bit right here. So, Phoebe opens up the Book of Shadows, much like I am right now, opens up the Book of Shadows to the very first page, which resembles this, which I'm realizing is difficult to see. Boom. Looks like that. So, she reads this thing here, this little incantation called the Dominus Trinus. So the Dominus Trinus states, "Hear now the words of the witches, the secrets we hid in the night. The oldest of gods are invoked here. The great work of magic is sought. In this night and in this hour, I call upon the ancient power. Bring your powers to we sisters three. We want the power. Give us the power." That is the Dominus Trinus. Side note, genuinely, Phoebe would be the first to die in a horror movie, but whatever. So, couple things about this. Thing number one. Hi, maybe don't just read random incantations in a spell book out of nowhere. Just maybe don't do that. That feels like a really bad idea. But it's also how Cardcaptor Sakura starts, so I don't know. I'm here for it. It's fine. It's cunty, whatever. So a lot of things happen with this. Like the lights do a little bit of a flicker. The chandelier downstairs glows with a magical blue light. The triquetra that was on the cover of the book goes from being three individual sort of points and leaves that are spread out to syncing back up with each other and forming one beautiful knot like that one. And there's an image of the three sisters that has them standing far apart, and they are all moved closer together in an image. All of these are visible in the trailer. The trailer, by the way, features the song How Soon Is Now, which is incredible. I adore it. It's one of my favorites. I go back to it rather a lot. My favorite version of How Soon Is Now is actually by a band that will show up in season 3. It's How Soon Is Now by Snake River Conspiracy. Shout out to Snake River Conspiracy, who are apparently coming back, and that makes me so happy. I love that. I love Snake River Conspiracy. I found them because of this show, and I've stayed with them ever since. I love them so much. Shout out to good music. We love good music on this thing. Anyway, Miss Phoebe then goes on to read the Book of Shadows all night. They learn that they're descendants of the witch named Melinda Warren, who is a witch who was... Okay, so Melinda Warren is a witch who was burned at the stake during the Salem witch trials. Whoo, child, I can't with this bullshit. There's a bit of misinformation that goes around rather a lot that bothers the shit out of me, which is, at the time that this show was coming out, so in the 90s, for some reason, when people would write about the Salem witch trials, they would write about these witches being burned. The witches were not burned in Salem. They were hanged one dude was pressed to death, and then several others died of malnourishment while in the care and custody of the police. People dying in custody has been a thing that's been happening rather a lot. How interesting that it still is a thing that seems to happen. Fascinating. Anyway, it's important to me as a Massachusetts-born and raised person that you all know that the witches were not burned in Salem. It's going to come up rather a lot that they're going to say that the witches were burned, and they were not. They were in fact hanged, and I wouldn't perseverate on this so much were it not for the fact that, like, I feel like it's very important to remember what happened at Salem, because we're honestly constantly always in a state of witch trials in America. We are in some state of moral panic constantly. And because we are always in a state of moral panic, it is important to get the facts right each and every time that we talk about these moral panics. I'll get off of my soapbox now a little bit, except there is one thing that I did want to talk about quickly, because the show's not ever going to bring this up, but I find it particularly fascinating. And if you watch Lexual's video on A Black Girl's Guide to Witchcraft, obviously she does touch on Salem a little bit, because it is claimed that Tituba is of African descent, except she wasn't. She was apparently white, but whatever. That's neither here nor there. But I looked this up, and the other people who were the other people of color specifically, who were accused of witchcraft at the time, during the Salem witch trials specifically, were two black women, both of whom were active practitioners of hoodoo who wound up getting off scot-free. It's ironic to me that a thing that today, in our modern times, we would look at as witchcraft back in the day, was apparently so not actually the witchcraft that they were thinking of and talking about, that they just let these active, what we would now call pagan practitioners, go. I love that. I adore that. There's something that's so wild about that. I could do a video essay about Salem, but I'm not going to, because I have to do this, and I have to do this first. Maybe y'all will get a video essay from me that is not directly connected to Charmed at some point, but maybe not. Also, you might not get that one because, I'll be honest, all the interesting stuff has been covered to death by other people. If you would like, you can also watch this Ask a Mortician video about what happened at Salem, wherein she actually goes to Salem and sees the spot where the hangings occurred and where the pressing occurred as well. I find it fascinating. I find it really interesting, and I find it very moving to go to the cemetery where their bodies were laid to rest. I also find it very interesting how long it took us to recognize, like, legally speaking, recognize that these women actually didn't commit a crime. Women and men, by the way, didn't actually commit any crimes, and that it was a incident of mass hysteria. I would have hoped that we would have reached that conclusion a lot longer, but that goes to show you something about moral panics and how long it takes us to unravel the sheer amount of fuckitude that happens during moral panics. Stay safe out there, y'all. It's crazy out there, especially right now. So, back to Melinda. Melinda had some powers. She had the power of telekinesis, she had the power of chronokinesis, and she had the power of precognition. She had visions, she could move things with her mind, and she could freeze time, or rather manipulate time. We'll get to that in a later episode of this. At the stake, Melinda said, LOL, literally all of my kids are going to be powerful. Every one of my descendants are going to be more powerful than the last one, and then we finally gonna arrive at 3 girls, and them 3 girls, them 3 sisters, are going to be the most powerful witches known to man. The supreme witch, the mean bitch of the universe, girl. If y'all don't know what Supreme Witch and Mean Bitch is in reference to, it's Agatha's Revenge by Ocean Kelly. Stream Agatha's Revenge by Ocean Kelly. Also stream Multiverse of Cuntness, also by Ocean Kelly. Adore. Incredible. Lit. So Phoebe is then like, after reading that, she's like, but like, what if that's us? And the other sisters are like, girl, witches ain't exist. That's crazy. So then Miss Prue up here goes to work. Side note, these butterflies here represent people within the Charmed family. People who are members of the family, as I consider them. People who are magically somehow related to these three. And Kit also has a little butterfly. This indicates basically just who the Charmed ones are. And it's mainly because I found pretty butterfly stickers and I wanted to put them on here. You will also see that there are small dots here. We will get to what these mean, but basically red stands for they know about the Charmed ones, and the small gold ones are magical beings. And our current magical beings are, boop, these ones, and also spoiler alert, Jeremy. Miss Prue goes to work, and Miss Prue works with her ex-fiance, and they have, like, this whole back and forth thing about, like, work and whatever, and about him taking credit for her work. While they're having this back and forth, Prue gets real fucking mad, and Roger's pen explodes in his pocket, and then also right onto his face. Yeah. And then later on, she nearly chokes him to death with her mind by making the tie, like, shrink on his neck. Because, in case you didn't gather this, homegirl right here has the power of telekinesis. And that's how it starts to manifest. So Miss Piper shows up to the restaurant that she has the restaurant audition at. Does that happen, by the way? I don't know if restaurants do that. I've worked in a restaurant and I genuinely don't know whether or not I did that. I didn't have to do that because I was a sous chef at the restaurant. Like, I didn't, whatever. It's fine. I wasn't like a cook generating the recipes. Anyway, so Miss Piper is at this restaurant and she's making a port sauce to go onto the recipe using the port that Jeremy gave her. But the chef is like, oh, we don't have time. I just need to taste it. So he goes to taste the soup and she throws her hands up like, ha! And when she does that, he freezes. Time stops, which gives her just enough time to take a little bit of the port sauce and put it on his spoon before he eats it. So then time unfreezes. He continues his little bite and is like, ooh, girl. Ooh, girl, that's good. Ooh, girl, that's good. Ooh. He's thrilled, and she basically gets hired on the spot, which is awesome. We love that for Piper. Now, obviously, in case you didn't pick up on that whole entire thing, Miss Piper has the power of chronokinesis. She can freeze time. That is what Miss Piper can do, at least at this point. And how that specifically works has a lot of rules to it, and we will get to them as time goes on. But one of the things she cannot do, she cannot freeze another good witch. Good witches don't freeze. Only evil witches do, and mortals and innocents, basically. Those are the people that freeze. Good witches do not freeze. Interesting. Worth noting. Remember that piece of information. Ooh. It'll be relevant later. Okay, so this is when we then cut back to Prue, who is still at her job and is in the act of quitting her job and also choking at her boss telekinetically on accident, but whatever. Phoebe has a vision, That's So Raven style, of two boys getting hit by a car. So she sees that that's about to happen, maneuvers her bike in such a way that she winds up saving the two boys from getting hit by the car, but she winds up hurting her arm in the process and has to go to the hospital. So she goes to the hospital, Prue goes to pick her up, and we get a couple scenes of Phoebe and Prue arguing about whether or not they have powers, which culminates at one point in Prue knocking all of the medicine off of a wall in a pharmacy, because Phoebe started to get Prue a little bit angry. And this is where we also find out that their powers are tied to their emotions, or at least some of them. I will be honest with you, premonitions I don't think are ever tied to someone's emotions. I don't know that that's possible. I think the premonitions just happen at random, or at least that's what they seem, because you can't really induce having a vision, or at least you're not really supposed to. You can't really have a premonition, and you can't, like, force a premonition, basically. They just show up. At least in these early seasons. I think in some later ones, some of them can be induced in some way, but they never really seem to be directly connected to Phoebe's emotions. However, the other two, it is very much connected to their emotions. Piper's are activated when she is afraid. She can freeze things by channeling her fear into wanting time to stop or slow down for a second, and she can then make that happen, which is pretty goddamn cool. I think that's pretty fascinating. Now, Prue's powers are tied to when she is pissed off and angry, which is why hers are the most active ones, also because Prue has emotional issues. She's got a lot of pent-up rage. Miss Prue has a lot of pent-up rage. So, Miss Piper goes on a little date with Jeremy, and this is where this moment happens, where Jeremy has her in a fucking elevator in an abandoned building and goes to stab her with an athame. Oh no. Oh, very, very bad. Oh no. So, Piper manages to freeze him while that's happening. So Piper winds up freezing Jeremy in this exact pose, which is why I have this up here, because this is the moment where Piper realizes, oh shit, okay. And then she tries to get out, and he tries to stab her in the leg, and she, like, hits him over the head with something, and she gets out, and she's on her way home. So now the girls are circling up back at the house. So Piper gets home and tells the girls about Jeremy and that Jeremy is a warlock, and they do a spell to try to get rid of Jeremy. That spell doesn't work. Jeremy is still very much alive and still coming for them. So Jeremy manages to still show up at their house, and they see him in the front doorway. He breaks in and starts trying to kill them, and the girls all run upstairs. Prue throws Jeremy against the wall as they all run up there. They barricade the door and try to come up with some type of plan. They're not sure what the hell to do with the plan. So what they decide to do is invoke the power of 3. Now, invoking the power of 3 basically involves them chanting, the power of 3 will set us free. The power of 3 will set us free. Over and over and over again until they're able to vanquish the shit out of Jeremy. Jeremy is the first person that they take the fuck down, and I have chosen to illustrate them taking fuckers out by using these little stickers that are shaped like arrows for some reason. Whatever. Anyway, boop. Fucker's dead. I like indicating that they're dead with a cute little arrow. So that's one of Piper's exes, and that's what they're little blue stars up there. I do not know if you can see them. They're small, and they're on a dark background. I will do something about that for later versions of this, but for now, like, I might put the little dots and things right next to the images if I can. I'll try to do that. I think that'll be easier. So the little blue hearts represent love interests. So currently we have 2 of them. Our little love interest here. I also have a little love interest here. If you know who this is, if you know. And we have another little love interest right here, back with Officer Andy. So Officer Andy shows up at the very end after they did all of that. Serena's cat has come to live with them, so that's, again, Miss Kit up here. Now, Andy recognizes... Andy ran into them, by the way, at the hospital. Andy ran into Prue at the hospital, and all these feelings, they dated way, way back in the day. And they want to date. They want to date, but Prue is like, my life just got a hell of a lot more complicated, and I don't know if I'm ready right now, so let's try to take it a little slow. But, like, it's not a no, it's just a, let's take it slow. But then, as Andy's walking away, he realizes that Phoebe is holding Kit. Kit is who they saw at the crime scene. So they identify Kit as the same cat that was at the crime scene, and Andy is like, that's suspicious. That's weird. And he's right for that. That is a little bit strange for the girls to have this random cat, except they did let the cat vaguely become a stray after the investigation or whatever. So they're still trying to wrap that case up, and they're not really going to fully be able to, except they're vaguely able to. They're never. The police never actually are able to cover this one up because the body is completely disintegrated. The body is never found. Jeremy fades from existence, so he's not actually tied to anything. They are not aware that it is him, or if so, I believe they connect it to him, but they're never able to find him again. So the case is just open because they're never going to be able to find him again. This is going to be a common thing that occurs in the Charmed universe overall. I'm looking at the recording time right now and realizing I've been recording for over an hour, and we are only down one episode. And by the way, that is the end of that episode. So you can see why this sort of gripped people, right? It's about the interpersonal relationships of these three grown-ass women, let's be clear. And you can see why that, like, sisterly bond is a huge central part of the story. It's a thing that a lot of people can relate to, and I think that's fascinating. This show is very Monster of the Week Buffy-coded, which is ironic because I believe Buffy came out the year before this one. The Craft came out in 1996, which is 2 years before we got Charmed. And I think that this is in many ways a sort of extension of The Craft, but also an extension of a film that came out this very same year, which is Practical Magic. Have y'all seen Practical Magic? It's a really good movie. I highly recommend. Patrons, let me know if you want to do a watch along to The Craft and Practical Magic as two witch-focused things that I loved. I think The Craft was a pretty successful film and showed that there was a audience for witches, but witches that we related to, witches that we understood. I think they really did something with that one that I think was very interesting, witches in terms of how they were portrayed in the media. I think around that time we're starting to get more of a positive portrayal. This is also, I will note, this show airs 2 years after the beginning of Sabrina the Teenage Witch, the sitcom, which again is part of that like turn, that tide in the way that witchcraft is being portrayed on screen. I personally find that very fascinating. I think that's very interesting. And this feels like if you felt like you were too old for Sabrina the Teenage Witch and you wanted it to approach themes that were a little bit more serious, maybe perhaps a little bit darker, this is a show for basically that demographic. It's a very similar sort of vibe to Buffy and a similar vibe to Sabrina, but like a good sort of middle ground between the two. And it makes sense that this aired on what we can effectively call the prototypical CW, as it were. This is the CW before the CW became the CW. It aired on W, though initially I started watching it on TNT. TNT, we know drama. Anyway, yeah, looking at this and knowing that I've gotten an hour and 16 minutes into this recording, I don't know how long that's going to translate into like length of episode, but we are going to have to shorten these a little bit because these are... Whew! But also these are Monster of the Week type of shows, and Monster of the Week type of shows don't necessarily benefit from like a deep level of analysis. So I think going forward, we're going to identify important pieces of information that need to be carried into each episode. So whenever we get a important lore drop or something like that, that's what we will talk about during these episodes. Episode 2, I Got You Under My Skin. Air date October 14th. So we open episode 2 with Phoebe entering the restaurant that Piper works at, which is called The Quake. So Piper is pissed because her boss that hired her quit, like immediately after hiring her to go open his own restaurant, because Of course he did. Phoebe sees a girl named Brittany who she notes has this like really cool tattoo on her hand. And this tattoo that was illegal to get in the United States. Getting it on your hand, at least at the time, was apparently illegal. I do not think that is the case anymore. I could be wrong. I don't keep up with tattoo laws. I have several. I just don't keep up with laws. There's one tattoo there. And there's one right here. Boom. And where's the third one? Oh, ooh, right there. Yes. Tattooed for the gods, Diva. If you have tattoos, let me know in the comments. I love tattoos. So Brittany has this tattoo on her hand, and that's important. That'll be used to identify her later on. So Brittany walks outside and gets attacked by a demon. And this demon, I have it written in my notes that this demon kind of acts like the beach from Old, which is to say that this beach makes you old. This demon makes you old. Side note, what did y'all think of the movie Old? I thought the comic book was good, but also just as weird as the movie. And I don't even think that the movie was, like, that bad of an adaptation. I think it captured a lot of, like, the horror of it all. I honestly was not a huge fan of finishing the comic books. I thought the comic book, like, just ended out of nowhere and wasn't, like, didn't have that interesting of an ending. But I would love to know what y'all think. I always love to know what you guys think about these things. So let me know, because I love you and I would love to know what you think about these things. Anyway, so, like, Phoebe has a premonition about a guy about to buy her a drink, and Piper says, "Oh my god, we agreed that you weren't going to use your powers, that none of us were going to use our powers because, like, magic is, like, dangerous or whatever." And Phoebe is like, "Girl, no, y'all agreed to that. I can't control these. They just happen. And also, if it's telling me that dude's about to buy me a drink, I might as well have the fucking drink. Why not?" And Piper's arc throughout this episode is basically just, is magic good or is magic evil? Am I evil? Am I evil? Am I the drama? Anyway, cut to Prue waking up at Andy's house. Also, side note, I would like to say about the agreement about the powers that what Phoebe said is that Prue said that they weren't going to use their powers, and Piper agreed. Phoebe did not agree. It's just Prue laying down the law about a thing. Anyway, cut to Miss Prue right here, waking up in Andy's house, in Andy's bed. Oh, scandalous! Oh, God. And so Prue is getting ready to leave after they've clearly done the horizontal tango, as it were. Prue is feeling guilty because they've moved, like, super fast, and she said, like, "Oh my god, I said I was going to move slow, and we slept together on the first date. Oh my god." So his alarm clock starts to go off, and Prue uses her telekinetic powers to throw this man's alarm clock out of the window. Remember exactly one scene ago when one of the sisters was being lectured for using her powers, the ones that she can't control when they happen or not. And this bitch, here she go, not following the rule that she set, but expecting everyone else to follow the rules that were set. How interesting. How interesting. In case you haven't gathered by the way I just said all of that, this is one of the things that gets me about Prue, that makes me so fucking annoyed with her throughout the run of this show. She will frequently set rules for the girls to follow because she's the oldest and therefore she sets the rules or whatever. And then she will just immediately, swiftly, first thing, violate the rule that she set, but expect everybody else to follow the goddamn rules. And this is where I have a huge goddamn problem with specifically her. I don't like that type of behavior. It's really fucked up. Like, it's just, I'm sorry, that behavior is fucked up to do. It's just fucked. I don't like it. It's not, I don't think it's fair to anybody, and Prue does that like all the fucking time, and she just did it on this very same episode, and I find that very fucked up. Anyway, so after she leaves without telling him anything, there we are, into the title sequence. Alrighty, so the episode opens up and the sisters are at the house talking about not using their powers, but also they're being jokingly little slut-shamey about Prue and Andy and them sleeping together, and Phoebe sleeping with some dude named Alec or whatever from the bar. He's not up here because he's never coming back. It doesn't matter. He does not matter. Piper goes to the church to talk to Pastor Williams, who is not pictured up here because, again, he's not that relevant, about whether or not witches are evil. And she's just trying to suss out whether or not she's evil. Pastor Williams has some really ancient, archaic shit to say about witches in general in both this scene and another one. In the next time we see Pastor Williams and we see Piper at the church, we see her trying to touch the door of the church and not quite being able to because a thunderclap happens and she gets like nervous about it or whatever. So Prue is going in to do a job interview at an auction house. She's in the elevator, Andy calls, and she is having a very weird and personal conversation on the elevator, and she talks a little bit of shit about the place that she's interviewing at while there's a certain man in that particular car. That man in particular is this one. We will get to him later, but just letting you know that he's in there. Now, Phoebe, at the restaurant, runs into a guy named Stefan. Stefan is a hot photographer who's in town and doing some photo shoots. Stefan immediately hits on her and asks for Phoebe to model for him. And that's always sus-ass behavior. That is suspicious behavior. Oh my god, suspicious behavior. Now, Phoebe seems a little bit skeptical, but is also kind of like, okay, girl, like, let's just go for it. Now, I'm gonna just spoil this now. Stefan is a demon known as Boop Javna. He looks like this, like an old fucking corpse of a man. He is a warlock who steals the youth of young women, and specifically young witches, if he's going to try to stay in his youthful form longer. About the CGI of all of this, the CGI by today's standards for this show, it is so camp. The CGI is not great. They remastered this and the CGI is still not great. But that's the thing. I find that charming when it comes to this show. Charming. I find it charming about this show that the CGI is not that good. I think it's adorable and endearing. We cut to the cops at one point. The cops are talking about how all these women are going missing and they're not able to find them, and how all these young women going missing, like, Andy tells Prue about this and to be careful and on the lookout. I believe he also tells this to both Phoebe and Piper at some point. Now, we cut back to Prue having her job interview, waiting for this guy called Rex Buckland. Rex Buckland is this guy. Now, Rex, in the elevator, heard her say she doesn't, like, really want this job, but, like, she's, like, obviously good at the job, and she kind of, like, and she needs the work. But also, like, he says, like, honestly, like, I don't know why I should hire you because you talk shit about my company in the elevator. At which point, she's like, that's not fair for you to hold that against me because that was a private phone conversation in an elevator. And I'm like, girl, then don't have private phone conversations in public. That's cell phone rule number 1, but whatever. And she demonstrates the fact that she knows a lot about art history in this scene. We also get to meet at this time her. Her name is Hannah. Hannah Webster. About Miss Hannah Webster, she's one of my favorite characters. She doesn't do much in this season. Honestly, she doesn't do much this whole show. But during this first half of the season, every time she is on screen, she says and does something cunty. And I love her so much. I love her so much for that. But also, I've always been drawn to villainous women. Now, that's also, again, the little red dots next to people. If you see little red dots, it is because those people with those red dots know about the Charmed Ones. They are aware of witches, witchcraft, magic in general, and specifically the Charmed Ones. So you can tell by the fact that these two have little red dots next to them. They're baddies. They're baddies. Spoiler alert, they are bad to the bone. Rex sees that Prue is very knowledgeable about art history and history in general, and throughout that, she also manages to somehow reveal that she's a witch with telekinetic powers, because Hannah knocks over paint on her, but she doesn't get the paint on her. She does this with her hands, and it curves around her, which is interesting because actually at this current moment in time, Prue's powers are not able to be channeled by her hands, but it's happened twice across 2 episodes. She normally only can do it with her eyes. We'll get to that later. That comes up in a later episode. Anyway, Phoebe attempts to use her powers to help a old couple win the lottery. She doesn't do this on purpose, I should be clear. She has a vision while holding a lotto card what the numbers are going to be for that night. So she helps this couple by telling them what the numbers are going to be so that they will benefit from it. However, the thing is, you cannot use your powers for personal gain. So when she buys a ticket for this lottery and plays the same numbers, her card at the very end of the episode winds up changing magically, as if she put different numbers on it. She can no longer claim the prize winnings, but that old couple can. I like the fact that she used her powers for the old couple first, and that was her first instinct, and she just immediately told them the number. That tells you the type of person that Phoebe is, that she is a very giving and loving person. That's so cute. That's so sweet. I love her for that. Honestly, in case it's not clear, Phoebe is one of my favorite sisters, just in general. Piper has a very bad and chaotic day at the restaurant and then talks to Phoebe about how she just wants to be normal again. Now, this is the first time in the show where Piper starts talking about how much she wants to have a normal, regular life. How she doesn't want to be this whole extra, like, everything. She just wants to be a normal-ass woman. That is one of the central themes of this entire show. And I will say it is incredibly relatable to me as a neurodivergent person, a person with autism, and a person with a bunch of other neurological things happening. I find that incredibly relatable. I've never really been normal, but I do often find myself wishing that I was normal because the world is built for people who are normal. The world is built to celebrate the normalness of people and not the things that make us individually special, and that can be really difficult to navigate. And that's basically what's happening here, is that she's wishing for that normalcy because things feel heavy and feel difficult. But Phoebe, in this moment, says to Piper that Piper is a good person and that these gifts that they have been given are meant to be used for good. This is one of the appeals of the show. This is the sisterhood of the show, and I genuinely think the portrayal of sisterhood in the show is one of the most magical things about it. It's one of the most beautiful things about this show. Comment below if you agree, if the sisterhood of the show is so magical, and if you can relate. I can. I have 2 magical sisters of my own. Well, human sisters, obviously, but magical in that they are magical to me. And I have other half-sisters, too, who are also magical as well. Anyway. Family, it's cool and good if you have it and are able to have it. Even if it's found family, that is also great. Anyway, so Piper goes back to the church and realizes that she's good because she is able to go inside. I am not a huge fan of the concept of using the church as a measure of good and evil. I don't really like that. When Piper comes out of the church, she sees Brittany, identified again by the tattoo on her hand. But Brittany, she looks old as hell and does not really remember what happened to her because her memory has started to go. Now, while all of that is happening, Phoebe has decided she's going to go and do that little photo shoot with Javna. But then she is kidnapped by Javna. Now, Piper and Prue get back to the house, and they look in the Book of Shadows to try and find Javna. They find him almost immediately, and Brittany recognizes Javna and remembers that his name is Stefan. And the girls all remember that Phoebe is off to go to Stefan's photography studio. So the girls then go to the photography studio just in time to save Phoebe from getting hit with Javna's weird eye beams that suck out the life force of women. Prue gets hit with the eye beams, but instead uses a mirror, holds up a mirror to him so that she can deflect his powers back at him. And while they have him down, they bind him using a spell called the Hand of Fatima. I'll be honest, the Hand of Fatima sounded real fucking specific in terms of a cultural thing, but I don't know that it is. I don't think that it is. I think they just called it the Hand of Fatima for some reason. So they do this spell and they chant this a couple times, and Javna's done, dusted, cooked. His goose is cooked. He's gone. He dead. Motherfucker dead. And the girls just walk out, but the cops are there. And they're like, why are y'all here? And the girls are like, we just got here because our truck broke down. But it's very clear that they're lying. And Andy's like, now girls. And that's where the episode ends. So this episode is where we establish that they cannot use the powers for evil. And they cannot use their powers for personal gain because personal gain is evil, basically. Or at least being overly selfish winds up turning you down a path of evil, for lack of a better way to put it. And I think that's fair, but what it feels like to me, as a person who has written an entire audio drama with a magic system in it, which is what this tattoo is in reference to, by the way, if you recognize that symbol, you are a real one, and I love you. What it feels like is that this is an episode that was written to establish the rules of magic and why witches don't just run around ruling the world all the time, and why it's not good to use your powers to benefit yourself. It feels like they had to write that in because otherwise it wouldn't necessarily have been the clearest in the world. And I think that's fair. I think that's fine. I don't think that's a bad thing to have to write. I think that's actually an important thing to know that you need to write that in. So I'm glad that they did. I think that is an interesting episode. This overall is not one of my favorite episodes, but it is a pretty good one, I think. Episode 3, Thank You for Not Morphing. Air date October 21st, 19. The most important thing in this episode is that we meet Leo Wyatt, played by Brian Krause. He is going to become a main player in this show as time goes on. And I love him, and he's everything. I had a huge crush on him when I was growing up. I still do. The other very important thing that happens is we have a very tense reunion with Bam, the girl's father. This is Victor Bennett. Now, his last name is Hallowell in this episode. That will later be retconned to be Bennett. The reason that it is retconned to be Bennett is that he didn't change his name to Hallowell when he married their mother. That didn't happen. He is Victor Bennett. He's been an absentee dad for a very long time, so the girls are all feeling their feelings about it. Phoebe is open to seeing her dad. Prue is absolutely not. Prue says, nah, girl, absolutely not. Particularly because they just realized they're witches and they're being hunted by warlocks every week. Which means, girl, no. Absolutely the shit not. Anyway, he gets a little red little dot next to him, and the reason he does is because he knows the girls are magic. He knows the girls are magical beings. This episode, we're dealing with a lot of break-ins because we're encountering low-level demons who are shapeshifters. This entire time, there are 3 shapeshifters called Cinda, Marshall, and Fritz who keep breaking into the house and trying to steal the book so that they can become the 3 witches with the power of the Charmed Ones. Despite the fact that they're not also able to touch the book and also that the book is actually good at sensing whether or not it's them. However, if the girls gave up the book, they could then take it and use it and become the rulers of hell or whatever. That's the whole goal there. Here's the thing. They were right to not trust their dad. Their dad was being threatened by the shapeshifters to steal the book from them. The girls ultimately figure this out, and they perform a safety spell on the house. The episode ends with Leo, who is a handyman. Love a handyman. Bringing the girls a video of Victor with the girls on Christmas when they were little. And it's very, very cute, and I like it. This episode is one that you can skip. It is not that interesting overall. The only important things that it establishes is that their dad is alive and around. He knows that they are witches, and he's happy for them, and he's out somewhere in the ether, and if they ever need anything, they can ask him for anything. He's around, but not there. And the only other important thing is that Leo shows up, and Leo will be a mainstay of this show going forward. Hell yeah! So I got through that in like 5 minutes. Fuck yeah. Okay, we're doing it. We're going. Yes, God. I honestly didn't even put the trio of shapeshifters up here because they were not relevant and they were not that interesting. They had like a couple lines that were interesting, but this is the first time shapeshifting appears in the show. It comes up rather a lot. A lot of people have the gift of shapeshifting, have the power of shapeshifting, and it comes up a fair bit, but I'll be honest, this was not an episode that I really very much enjoy. I will be doing an episode ranking at the end of this. I'm going to keep it quick and brief for each one. Basically, I'll just say the title and I'm basically just going to say the title of the episode, and then I will put its like corresponding number into the tier list as we go through it. So, yeah. This one is definitely on a lower tier, on a skippable tier, specifically. Trust me, dear, there are going to be some episodes of this season that wind up in the F tier. We'll get there. Oh, honey, will we get there. Woo! Anyway, the next episode, episode 4, is called Dead Man Dating. This air date, October 28th, 1998. I apologize that I'm speeding through this. I am losing fucking steam, Diva. I am losing steam. Anyway, I'm going to keep this one kind of short because this one does not feel very interesting to me. Generally, the only important things here are that John Cho is in this episode. Though this episode centers on Chinese culture, I would like to point out that the major characters of note in this episode are John Cho and this deity right here that was made up for this episode, who is played by a white man named Todd. John Cho is Korean. John Cho is Korean and not Chinese. I would like to point that out. No one who wrote the episode was Chinese either, and I will be honest, it shows because the research done on the culture specifically is not very good. They got the cultural funerary practices wrong, which is a big deal to me. As you know, by the fact that I recommended Ask a Mortician earlier, I'm going to recommend them again. It's important to, if you're going to reference a culture and their practices, to do so correctly and to do so with care. And this show does, I will say, have a habit of not doing so. Part of that, and I wish I could even remotely come close to giving them the benefit of the doubt on this one. The thing is, though, is that I can't with this because, one, there are Chinese people they could have hired. They didn't have to hire John Cho for this. I'm not mad at John Cho for getting work, but what I am mad at is the fact that they didn't clearly reach out to actual Chinese actors. They clearly didn't, when they were writing the episode, go to like a Chinese person to verify any of the funeral practices. They didn't like check in on any of these things. Also, there's a weird fucking moment in here where Phoebe becomes a fortune teller and the costume she is wearing is that of it's giving I Dream of Jeannie, but it's also giving G slur. The G slur that I'm not going to say for the Romani people. Gitana is another word to use for it, but I don't fully speak Spanish, so like that's whatever. Yeah, it's giving that, which also feels fucked up. But she gets a job as a fortune teller that she immediately loses. No magic is actually used in this episode except for their regular known powers. Makes this episode extremely skippable and just not interesting and not very well handled. I will, however, because we are here and because it is of note, despite the fact that he does not stay very long, he is technically a love interest of Piper's. So he gets a little blue heart next to his name because he is in fact a love interest. He also gets a little red dot because he is aware of the Charmed Ones. However, John Cho in this plays a Chinese ghost, which I guess technically makes him kind of magical, which is why he gets a gold one. However, he is also an innocent person who dies, which is why he's getting a little pink dot right there. Innocent people that die. That's what the pink dots represent. At least that's what I'm telling myself. So, there we go. That's it. That's the end of that episode. So we're just going to speed on right along to the next one. Shit, I just looked at what the next one is. Oh my god. Oh dear. Oh, anyway. Also, side note, just again, shout out to the Order of the Good Death if you want to look into stuff about funerals in general and about preparing for death and being death positive overall. Check out the Order of the Good Death and also Ask a Mortician and also just Caitlin Doty in general. I very much appreciate her channel and have for a very long time, and that their channel gave me a lot of comfort and a lot of peace of mind in a really meaningful way. So recommend that. So that's down in the description. Go ahead and take a gander. Love y'all. All right, so episode 5, Dream Sorcerer. Air date, November 4th, 1998. So Miss Prue here winds up getting hit on by a dude, a disabled man, who's over here, and she winds up rejecting him. But this disabled man is apparently a fucking incel and haunts the dreams of every woman who rejects him and tortures them and kills them. So this man goes on to haunt Prue's dreams, trying to kill her, and eventually she pushes him off of a cliff, killing him instead. Okay, this is bad disability representation. Obviously. However, the nuance of that is that this is a accurate portrayal of how scary it can be to be a woman who dates men, and how scary it can be to, as a woman, reject a man. I'm a trans woman, and I experienced that. Even prior to me transitioning, I experienced it then. I still experience it now. It's not cute. It's not great. It's a very scary thing, and I will give this episode credit for showing that off. I just really wish that they hadn't done so based on this man being disabled. This man could have easily not been disabled and have this have been the same outcome. Generally speaking, nothing really happens here during this episode. The only other magic used... Actually, no, sorry. There's no magic used just generally. The only thing that winds up happening is Prue using her powers during the dream to push him off of a cliff while he's been trying to kill her by knocking her off of the same cliff. And this is one of those situations where if you die in a dream, you die in real life. So here's the thing about this episode. This is an accurate portrayal of what it is like to be a woman rejecting men, and I have experienced that myself. I will tell you now about a little incident that happened to me, like very, very recently. Like as I record this, it happened about a month ago at this point. I had this old man hit on me. This old man decided he would hit on me from his car, by the way. He was in his car when he said this. He said that I'm going to quote him directly because I feel like this is just so you get a sense for what this was. He said to me, I could just run over your legs with my car so that you can't move, and then pick you up and put you in the trunk of my car, and then take you home where I can do whatever I want with you. Doesn't that sound fun? Men are weird. Men are weird and gross, and that was gross and bad. That was very, very gross and very, very bad. That portrayal of a man not taking no for an answer is one that is fairly accurate, sad to say. It's why the number of people who have been assaulted in this world is as high as it is. It's really dark, it's really bad. And this is also not to say that women can't also do that as well. Women are capable of doing that same behavior as well. Again, we're not going to dwell on it for too long because I can't do all that. Anyway, the only magic that actually happens in this episode is that Phoebe and Piper cast a love spell, which, if you recall from a few episodes ago, we talked about personal gain. Love spells are, one, wildly unethical, but also, this is an attraction spell, so it's just it's almost like putting on a nice perfume, which will make people lean in a little closer to you and smell you a little more and be a little bit more interested. It gives you an opening. It doesn't necessarily roofie anybody into being attracted to you, if that makes sense. Love spells generally are rather unethical, so if you're thinking of doing one, don't. Maybe try getting a hobby instead. That said, the consequences for this is that it works too well and it becomes dangerous, at which point they have to reverse it, which they do. I hate it. I fucking hate this episode. This one is a dumpster fire of an episode. The Dream Sorcerer is really bad disability rep. Men can be incels while also not being disabled. This person did not need to be disabled, and this person was also not played by a disabled actor. Not good. Anyway, he's gone. Fuck that dude. He's dead. Anyway, moving on to Episode 6, The Wedding from Hell. Air date, November 11th, 1998. The dolls, the divas, the girls, the sisters, fight Hecate, the goddess of the underworld. This is technically speaking their first time in the show fighting a high-level demon. And here's the tea. This episode is fun. I love this episode. This episode's pretty great. Piper has a pregnancy scare. She's not pregnant, though. It's fine, or whatever. Now, Miss Hecate, who, by the way, is over here. She's been behind my head a lot of the time. When she's in her human form, she looks like this. And when she is Miss Goddess thing Hecate over here, she is monstrous. There's a really fun sequence involving a male stripper. So basically, there's this man who basically his mama made a deal with Hecate years prior, 20 years prior, that Hecate could have her son's hand in marriage, basically so that she could have more children to bring about, some more demons. Her children include a lot of, very scary dictator types. Genghis Khan is technically one of her offspring. Demon offspring is what we're talking about, and it's real bad. So, ultimately, Prue winds up researching a magical dagger that happens to be the exact thing that can kill Hecate, so they happen to just have that, and they wind up forcing her into the dagger, which is wild, but the dagger has to be wielded by that dude while they do that. It's a weird scene, but it's honestly fascinating, and after that, apparently, they all forget. Now, the thing about this episode is I would say don't skip this one because I think this episode is really fun and very interesting. Is it plot relevant? No, it is not. It is not relevant. Also, Hecate, I feel like, is trapped rather than vanquished, but we are gonna go with she was vanquished, and she technically should get only one of these because it's the same person, but I'm giving her two because I love her. Anyway, that's how that goes. So she is dead. Now, this episode's a really fun time. It's a really fun watch, this episode, but they do fuck up the mythology of who Hecate is. Hecate in mythology is the goddess of magic, basically. And that is how she is worshipped by people who are pagan now. She is seen as one of the triple goddesses, by which I mean one of the versions of the triple goddess across different cultures, represented again by the maiden, the mother, and the crone. And this kind of fucks that up a little bit, or rather mainly only shows her off as the mother aspect and not the maiden or the crone. Though at one point, I suppose, she was a little bit the maiden. One could argue that this form here is her maiden form, and that this one here is her crone form, but the goal of both of them is to be mother. And honestly, she ate. She was giving mother. The bridesmaid party sequence is my favorite. It's one of my favorite scenes in the show. This is not one of my favorite episodes because it's not, but it is really fun. It is one of the best of the first season, in that it's really fun and exciting and funny. It is not strictly plot relevant for any of the following episodes, so if you could skip it, you're not going to miss plot things, but it's worth watching. Treat yourself nicely. Have some fun. Y'all, we're on to episode 7. Yes, God, we're on to episode 7, y'all. And episode 7 is one of my favorite episodes of the season so far. This was one of the first ones that was my favorite when I was younger. Episode 7, The Fourth Sister. Air date, November 18th, 1998. So, we open with meeting this witch here named Aviva. Aviva has made a pact with a sorceress named Kali. Kali is right here, or rather they pronounce it Kali. I am not going to go super in depth on this episode in particular. The reason I'm not is because on my Patreon, this is the episode that I decided to do a watch-along for this season. There are going to be several like this where I do several different watch-alongs because I like them, honestly, if we're being real. The reason I'm doing them is because I enjoy them. I find them fun. But this is one that I've already done, and it is already up on my Patreon right now. You can go check it out. One of the things that is the most fun about this episode and the highlights about this episode in general, basically, what Kali has asked Aviva to do is infiltrate the Charmed Ones and become the fourth sister. Or, rather, more accurately, to take the place of one of the sisters. That one. So basically, kill one of the sisters and take their place as a member of the Charmed Ones so that Kali can take the powers of the Charmed Ones, basically. Now, couple fun things that happened during this episode, couple highlights. So, someone acknowledges Prue being an absolute bitch throughout most of this season. It happens to be this young goth girl who doesn't really fully know any better, but whatever. And it's true. She gets on my nerves. But anyway, doesn't mean she deserves to die, though. We also get the beginnings of the Piper and Leo love story. Ooh, yes. Yes. He got his little heart right next to him because he is one of the lovers of the show. What I will acknowledge here is that Piper and Leo are my OTP for this show. I love them very much. They're perfect. This is also the episode where we see this image, where we get just a lovely moment of seeing Leo's ass just on screen, and Piper ogling Leo's ass, and then Miss Phoebe comes in and looks at Leo's ass and says, "My Santa, how you've changed." And it's very funny to me, and I love it very much. I feel like back in the 90s, we didn't really get a lot of female perspective in terms of, like, looking at a man and ogling a man. And I don't know, it was just refreshing to see it, because we don't frequently get to see women being allowed to look at men with lust, basically. And this is one of those moments where we get that, and I think that's fun. I think that's cute. What do y'all think? I think that's cute. One of the things that I liked about this episode back in the day is that we got a young goth girl on screen Aviva is very much like that one girl from The Craft. In fact, they visibly look almost the same. Actually, genuinely deadass, they visually look almost exactly the same. And I love that that's an archetype that we get in these stories. I guess you can't really fully tell from what I'm wearing right now. I am definitely an alt girly. Definitely at the time that I joined onto this show and started watching the show, I was definitely an alt girly, even if I didn't have the clothes for it. I had the personality for it and the music taste for it. I'm still a goth girl even now. It's part of my personality and just always is going to be a part of my personality. But because of that, I identified very much with Lil Aviva, also because I had a lot of trauma I was dealing with. And so does she. That it's the entire point of this whole plot here is Miss Aviva is being manipulated by an older person who is taking advantage of the fact that she needs a family. And that was a thing that I identified with rather a lot with this episode. Also, Homegirl had black cream lipstick, and I need to know who back in the 90s, back in the fucking day, who was selling black cream lipstick? Like, Diva, I deadass need to know. Who, if you were alive in the 90s, where did you get black lipstick? I have it now. I love it now. The one I currently use is from Miss Trixie Mattel. I love it very much. It is a matte, though. It is not a black creme lipstick. But she had a black creme lipstick, and I want to know where it came from. Anyway, also because, like, at this point in the 90s, like, liquid lipsticks, like, were not the vibe. That was not the vibe. So it wasn't a liquid lipstick, and it had a cream finish, so I'm interested. I love makeup. I know I'm not wearing any right now, but I live for makeup. It'll come up later. So let me know. Let me know if you know where I can get some black creme lipstick that is good and that holds up pretty nicely. Let me know, divas. Comments below. This episode really speaks to me. The plot overall does not fully impact the whole series. In fact, Aviva only shows up in this one episode. I would actually love to know what happened with Aviva. Like, I would live if she had come back in a future season. She didn't. I know that she didn't. But I wish her character had come back. By the end of it, she's gone through a whole fucking arc. And it would have been nice to see her come back later on, maybe in a sort of different capacity, as another one of the many witches that show up over the course of this show. Now, the way that they wind up defeating Callie is they push Callie into a mirror and then they break the mirror. Very, very simple, very, very straightforward. And that does mean that I have to put a little arrow sticker specifically on Callie. Now, also, Aviva is a witch, so she also gets a little gold dot as a magical being. Technically speaking, she was a magical being. Anyway, she's only there for that one episode and she never actually comes back, so it's fine. Now, I guess the only ramifications that this has is that we start to see what is early on being billed as a love triangle between Piper, Leo, and Phoebe. Anyway, yeah. Oh, I also wanted to talk about Aviva a little bit more because Miss Aviva is played by Danielle Harris. Danielle Harris is a well-known scream queen who appears in 4 of the Halloween films. She was a little girl in the original ones, and she played an adult in the sort of rebooted franchise in the Halloween films. And she's been in a lot of other horror movies. She's honestly very awesome. She's very awesome. I think she's super cool. And she's got a new movie coming out in 2024 called Stream. And it looks like it's going to be fun. Let me know if y'all want me to watch it and review it on this channel. I will happily do that. Anyway, I wanted to shout out Danielle Harris as a scream queen because if y'all didn't know, I am a narrator on a show called Creepy. I love Creepy very much. It's a very lovely podcast. I've been working with them now for, like 3 years, and I feel so blessed that I get to work with Creepy. Because that is a thing that is in the realm of horror, it's horror and creepypasta. I always want to shout out the Scream Queens and the people in horror that I look up to and that I love. So, Shout out to Danielle Harris for being a bad bitch and being in this amazing show. And I hope she is doing well. Anyway, on to the next episode. Episode 8. The Truth is Out There, and It Hurts. Air date, November 25th. Okay, so we have our first time traveler episode. Yes! Oh, dear God. Okay, so we also have a kind of unethical use of magic that I guess technically speaking is punished at the end, but like, of course it does, but also it doesn't feel like it is a punishment. We'll get to it. We'll get to it a little later. So right off the bat, we see a guy named Gavin, pictured here. Difficult to see, but he's got a little eye laser. And we immediately see Mr. Gavin come through and laser beam murk a doctor named Dr. Mitchell with his third eye. Girl, what is this show? Oh my God. Anyway, Miss Piper is being overworked at Quake. Like, actively just overworked, and that is her main stressor throughout the whole episode. Phoebe bumps into Gavin at the restaurant and has, like, a whole fucking vision or whatever about, like, a dead body. But she pictures a lady being killed. But instead, we see, like, they go to where the body is, and they find Dr. Mitchell. So they're like, girl, who the fuck is this lady? We need to go find her. And Piper and Phoebe argue over who should date Leo. Prue takes Phoebe aside, and they have a whole conversation about the boyfriend stealer thing again. Despite the fact that it is clearly Roger's fault, and if they had just one fucking conversation about this, the whole weird drama would be over. But you know what? My mama and my grandmama used a word all the time to describe a person like Prue. And that word, it might be a black parent word. Let me know if the white people in the audience have heard of this word before. But the word is hard-headed. Prue, Miss Thing over here, is hard-headed. Hard-headed as fuck. Diva, get it together. Miss Prue is hard-headed as shit, and it gets on my fucking nerves. It's fine. Whatever. Anyway, we cut to the Book of Shadows being messy, messy boots. Ooh. Now, the Book of Shadows, being a messy-ass bitch, decides to open up to a very specific spell called the Truth Spell. She casts this Truth Spell with the other girls still in the house, which means they all have to deal with the Truth Spell-ass shenanigans. Now, here's the thing about this. The book is so fucking messy. Oh my God. Basically, what'll wind up happening is, for the next 24 hours, you will hear the truth from everybody. Everybody will be compelled and forced to tell you the truth. That is what they have to do. That is what they will have to do. That is how that has to go. The consequence for this spell is literally just at the end of that 24 hours, they will forget you had any conversation with them at all. And you have to live with the fact that you know the information that they told you. And also the charmed ones have to fall victim to it as well. They are forced to tell each other the truth, which is how several things happen, basically. But I wanted to address this. This is an unethical ass spell. It absolutely is. If a spell like this actually existed and functioned the way that this one does in this show, it would be unethical as fuck. And it would be quite bad. It removes people's autonomy. And we just talked about the dangers of the removal of body autonomy a little bit earlier. We discussed how creepy it is when men do that. It is just as creepy when other people do that, even if it's via magical means. That is still fucked up. It's still very creepy. I'm not a fan of the truth spell overall. I understand it a little bit if you are testing the ground with certain things. But at the same time, that removes people's autonomy to be able to, react in the moment and know how you would react in the moment. And I don't think the consequences of this spell really mean anything. I really don't. I don't think the consequence of you have to remember what they told you is a good consequence. I want to skip past, the spell and just talk about what winds up happening for each sister. So Piper asks her boss why he overworks her, and he says he ain't want to hire more people, so she then quits. Piper asks Leo out, and they kiss for the first time, and that is a positive. That's on God, sis. That is very cute. Prue asks Hannah why she's being such a bitch. And remember, Hannah's over here. So Prue asks Hannah why Hannah's been such a bitch to her. And Hannah says, "It's my mission in life to destroy you." And that is the cuntiest line I have ever heard on this show so far. I adore it. It's very good. Prue tells Andy that she is a witch, and Andy is like, "Girl, I don't know about all this. I can't fucking deal with this." And the girls ask Gavin who he is, and basically we've discovered that Gavin over here is a warlock from the future who's coming to kill people responsible for a vaccine that prevents warlocks from existing. Now, they just kill that man with a crowbar in his third eye. Damn. Andy then winds up telling Prue that he can't be in a relationship with a witch. And then he immediately forgets the spell, which, like I said, I don't think that that's much of a consequence, but Prue has to leave it there. I feel a little bit bad for Prue here because she really does like Andy and she really does want that normal life or whatever, but then also, fuck the police, and also Prue can do better. She can do better. She deserves a better love interest than this. I think that that is true. Leo and Piper then go out to get drinks, and that's basically where the episode ends. This episode is not one of my favorites in general because the rules of the universe don't fully play out as well as they should, but it does give me some of my favorite Piper and Leo moments, and I think that that's a 10 out of 10 right there. For Piper and Leo shippers, this episode is a 10 out of 10. And now with that, I will come back to you on a different day to cover more episodes after this, because Diva, I'm exhausted and I need to go bleach my fucking hair. So when I come back and I talk to y'all, I'm gonna look like a whole brand new bitch, and I hope you're excited for that. Episode 9, The Witch is Back. Air date December 16th, 1998. Ooh, so fun, so spooky. Love it. Right off the bat, the girls do a little bit of necromancy in this episode. I just want to tell y'all that so that doesn't surprise any of us. Are we all surprised? No? Fabulous. Good. Zero surprises. I'm also not being shady when I say that they did necromancy, and I'm also not doing any type of trickery. There is no trickery in this house, Diva. Not today, not now, not this moment, Diva. Okay. The girls end up opening a locket containing a powerful warlock by the name of Matthew Tate. Or, as I will now proceed to call him, Matthew the Taint. He is a taint. He is the taint. Matthew the Taint. Matthew Tate was trapped in the locket by one Miss Ma'am, Miss Thing, the diva, the doll, giving it to you every ball. The ancestral supreme witch, queen bitch, slaying Salem fiercely since 1617 bitch, Miss Mother Melinda Warren. That was extra, even for me, but it was great and it was worth it. We love to see it. Okay, Matthew and Melinda. So this is Matthew, and this is Miss Melinda right here, by the way. I will have popped her up on the screen when I was giving her all that cred. Anyway, this is Miss Matthew over here. Miss Matthew, basically, when a witch's powers are used on him, he can then use them later. That is how he obtains powers, basically. He took her powers and then turned Miss Melinda in for witchcraft, which is how she winds up being on the pyre at that point. And Miss Thing curses Mr. Asshole right here into the locket, because one thing about Miss Melinda, she will lay down a fucking curse that will change the course of generations to come, Diva. She will. And she will curse this motherfucker because fuck him. Fuck Matthew Taint. Nasty on period, sis. Now, Miss Prue goes off to work. And at work, Mr. Rex over here, that motherfucker who we haven't talked about in a few episodes, it's fine, don't worry about it, he's okay for now, but fuck him. He gives Miss Prue this locket and is like, ooh, fucking blah, blah, do something with the locket. I can do a better accent than that. I just don't give a fuck about that man, so we're not going to. She opens it. Matthew comes out and attacks her. Prue in this moment does not catch on that Rex and Hannah are warlocks, but this is when we find out that they are warlocks. Officially, by the way. The aim of these two, basically, is that they are trying to get the powers of the Charmed Ones, because that's the basic things that all warlocks are here for. That's what they all want. Oh, God, warlocks only want one thing, am I right? I'm a fucking loser. Oh, my God. The sisters, after Miss Matthew attacks, they convene and they go to check out the book, because they think obviously something will be in there to help, like, because there's this fucking warlock after them and the book always has a fucking answer. They summon Melinda Warren from the dead, who, by the way, has been dead for 306 years, because that makes this what? They figure out who this man is, but they do not quite figure out how to vanquish him, and instead what they do is they do a little spell to call Miss Melinda Warren herself. A woman who has been dead for 306 years by the time this episode airs. Summoning a lady from the dead Summoning a lady who has been dead for 306 years makes this what? Necromancy. Yep, that's what that makes it. Necromancy. But, like, it's light necromancy. It's fine. It's light necromancy. Girl, okay. Long story short, some hijinks ensue, and basically, with the help of Melinda, the girls are able to curse Matthew back into the locket. At the end of this episode, Piper asks Leo out officially, but then the girls have to then send Melinda back to the realm of the dead. And Melinda gives Phoebe a vision of all of their future descendants, all of the daughters of the Charmed Ones. Melinda takes a locket with her, which is how he is effectively vanquished, because she took it back into time, and it no longer is in the present where people can randomly open it, which makes him officially deceased. It is time for me to bestow fucking Matthew Taint with an arrow of his own. And boom. That's why that motherfucker dead. Dead as hell. What shoes he got on in his casket. Do y'all remember that video?
Alright, shut up.
You shut up.
That's why your shoes raggedy.
That's why your mama dead. Dead as hell. What shoes she got on? What shoes she had on in her casket? That's why your granny ain't got no knees and she can't pray to Jesus, bitch. How about that? She can't double dutch.
Yeah,
That's why your baby got a glass eye. And when she cry, you gotta clean it with Windex, bitch. I'll get out your car. Fuck.
No, my car.
Oh my god. Like, shout out to that creator. I love that video. That is so out of pocket. So, all in all, this is a pretty good episode. It's interesting to me. This is a fun episode. I think it's pretty good. I think it's fun. It's a fun one. I love a quick jaunt to the past, and I also love bringing someone from the past in a modern day, and I love the hijinks that ensue with that. It's always really fun. Always really fun for me, especially. If that is your cup of tea, sound off in the comments if that's your cup of tea. I would love to know that. Yeah. Episode 10, Wicca Envy. Air date, January 13th, 1999. Woohoo! This episode is a pretty big deal episode. For example, Piper and Leo have sex for the first time. We love it. We love that for them. Rex and Hannah also trick the girls into committing a crime that gets Prue thrown in jail by Andy. Sure. Now, the only way to get out of that is to relinquish their powers to Rex, which by this point they have realized that he is in fact a warlock. Now, they relinquish their powers to ultimately get Prue out of jail. And when they relinquish their powers, it does make the Book of Shadows go completely blank. And when the Book of Shadows goes blank, we finally get a little reveal about one Miss Leo. Miss Leo Wyatt over here. We learn something about Leo this episode in particular, which is that he is more than just a regular handyman. He holds his big, strong hands over top of the book, and the words and the everything and the power of 3 comes back to the Charmed Ones as the book itself is restored by Leo's powerful, strong, masculine hands. God. I need to chill out. Girl, I need to chill out. Jesus. Once the Charmed Ones have their gifts back, that is when they freeze Hannah, who has just taken the form of a panther and is trying to kill them. Miss Hannah, Miss Thing, shapeshifted into a panther and was going to pounce on them. But Piper, this is right when her powers come back, so Piper's able to freeze her and is like, oh, you know what I could do? What we could do? We could push her in front of Rex so that she will maul Rex as a panther and not us. So that's what the girls do. Exactly as they thought, Hannah mauls Rex, which has them both disappear into flames, effectively meaning both of them are dead. Technically speaking, Miss Hannah is not actually dead, but it is revealed later that the Source killed her, so she is in fact dead. Goodbye, especially to miss you, Miss Hannah. You came, you served cunt, and you mauled your boss before you left. That's queen shit. That's queen shit right there. Leo, as he's walking away, turns into sort of magical light as he leaves. Also, Prue returns to her jail cell, and it is then figured out that she's not guilty, obviously, and that the sisters weren't guilty at all, and that it instead was Rex and Hannah who were identity thieves and stealing money. That was the general B-plot of the episode. Leo says goodbye in general. Here's the thing. The show hasn't said what he is yet. The white light on its own should be enough to tell you, but if you've ever watched that show, you have undoubtedly heard of the term white lighter. Here's the thing. I do not know what the term white lighter, like why they went with that instead of guardian angel, which is a thing that is just as easy to say and just as fine to say. Maybe it's that guardian angels are a little bit too Christian and they were a little worried. Leo is a white lighter, a guardian angel for good witches, basically. Technically speaking, Leo is dead. This actually makes it Piper's second romance with a dead person. This is also the one time that white lighters are shown to have the ability to use telekinesis. This first season, the white lighter powers are not properly defined, like at all. I guess it doesn't matter. This is fiction. This is fantasy. The other thing that I think is important is that this rounds off the Rex and Hannah storyline. It also gives us some developments in the Piper and Leo relationship. And I think that's pretty neat. I think that's pretty nifty. I like this episode rather a lot. I like how they handle wrapping everything up. I think the mind control aspect of certain powers that are shown on the show are very interesting. I always think mind control powers are really a commentary about consent. And I don't know, I find that interesting. And I also think it's interesting that Andy just straight up arrested Prue this episode. Whatever, y'all already knew how I feel about Andy. Anyway, let's move on. Episode 11, Feats of Clay. Air date, January 20th, 1999. If you enjoy The Mummy, which ironically also came out in 1999, you will adore this opening sequence. White people leave the remains and burial sites of brown and black people alone challenge. Challenge level impossible, apparently emotional, not clickbait. Do y'all ever think about the fact that a lot of museums just actively have a dead body, like, on display, where, like, it very clearly was not in the death plan of those dead people to have a bunch of people pay to see their corpse on a daily basis, when in fact they were likely locked in a tomb that very specifically says, hey, don't take my body out of here. Do y'all ever think about that and, like, lose sleep at night? Because I kinda do. Anyway, 3 white guys break in to steal a wizard's urn in Egypt, and the guardian of the urn shows up. Miss Guardian of the Urn right here. Miss Diva, Miss Thing, Miss Doll. We love to see it. That guardian of the urn just appears and starts dropping bodies. The bodies specifically of the white people that robbed her little tomb, or robbed the little wizard's urn. Okay, here's the thing. It's not technically in a tomb, it's just in a house in Egypt, in Cairo specifically. But, like, I don't know. Maybe white people should stop stealing shit from, like, the Middle East, perhaps. Also, free Palestine. I'm aware that we're talking about Egypt and that Egypt is not Palestine. However, it is a part of the Middle East. What's happening there is an atrocity. Calling for ceasefire. Also, fuck both Islamophobia and anti-Semitism. Fuck all of that noise. One of the thieves happens to be an ex of one Miss Phoebe. Oh my god, Miss Phoebe. And it happens to be this one. And guess what his name is? His name's Clay. You guys, his name's Clay. Like Aiken, like Clay Aiken. Isn't that so funny? And speaking of Clay Aiken, this guy looks very gay. But that's also just like a 90s thing. A lot of dudes in the 90s just looked incredibly homosexual. That's Miss Clay right there. Clay shows up and tries to offload the urn that this is the guardian of onto both Prue's auction house up here and Miss Phoebe right here, or via Miss Phoebe. And that doesn't succeed. Clay continues to try to avoid the guardian and her murderous tendencies. 2 of his friends die in rather spectacular ways. She's killing them ancient Egypt style. He keeps having altercations with the guardian, but then finally that ends because he, Miss Clay, jumps in front of Phoebe in a sort of selfless act to try and save Phoebe's life from getting bit by a giant snake that the guardian has sent after him. At which point, the guardian says, you good, and just disappears and takes the urn with her. Here's the thing. I'm not counting her as vanquished. She didn't die, she just left. I don't think we will ever know where she is. I don't even want to think of her as a villain. I don't think she is a villain. I think, much like Yama over here, Yama is just simply doing his job. His literal actual job is to make sure souls get to the next place that they go. Her job is to make sure the urn of a wizard doesn't get fucking stolen from Egypt. That's all the fuck she's there for. So the B-plot of this episode is Miss Piper having some issues at her restaurant with her employee, and she casts a spell to boost his confidence, but she doubles the recipe, which is never a good plan, because thing about giving a random white man an unearned boost of confidence is that's how you wind up with the muskrat known as Elon. Girl, don't do it. Do not give white men extra confidence that they don't fucking deserve. Don't do it. No. So eventually that backfires and she undoes the spell pretty easily. All in all, I think this episode is a very cute little episode. Here's the thing, it is pretty skippable. Nothing from this episode really has a whole lot of consequences for the rest of the series, so you could skip it, but you would also miss out on the absolute serve that is the costume of the Guardian of the Urn. Like, just look at it. That's cool. That's cool as hell. Here's the thing. I know it's Orientalist in nature, and I know that is bad. I also think it's really pretty. I think it's a serve. I'm sorry. Egyptomania is fucked up. but this outfit is also still a serve. It's also not historically accurate, but I don't particularly care. It's still pretty. Episode 12. Air date January 27th, 1999. Out of respect to the belief and cultural practices of the Ojibwe, the Saulteaux, the Cree, the Naskapi, and the Innu indigenous tribes, as well as other Algonquin-speaking peoples, I am not going to say the name of the creature this episode, nor am I going to actually discuss this episode at all. This is for two reasons. Reason number one, these groups have stated before that to speak the name of this creature is to invite its negative energy into your life. And girl, I don't want that. I've had a bad enough day already, personally. I don't particularly need that. And I also don't want that for all y'all that are watching. Absolutely not. And thing number two, not a single person on the creative team of this episode is a person from any of those tribal lands. Not from that culture at all. I very much believe that Indigenous people should be able to express and share their culture with whoever they want. I have a massive problem when white people start co-opting it. And yes, the writing team for this episode, the directing team for this episode, all white. I have a huge issue with them taking this thing from this culture. And I've had this issue before because it's a common thing that actually occurs in a great many episodes of not just this show, but other shows as well. I'm not okay with it. There have been people from those tribes that have said that they are not okay with it, and out of respect to them, I am not going to talk about it, and we are going to move very swiftly on to the next episode. All said, I think that we should let other cultures, honestly, we should let them share their own stories. I would love that. I would love to hear the stories from them. However, I just quite simply do not feel comfortable talking about this episode, so we're going to move on to the next one. Bam, just like that. Actually, one more little thought, which is I did do a lot of research on whether or not I should talk about this episode. I found some conflicting things about whether or not I should, and I am erring on the side of compassion for another culture that is not my own. That is not caving or being super extra PC or woke or whatever the fuck like conservatives love to fucking say. No, this is about respect. I respect other cultures and other people, and if that means that my behavior could negatively impact someone, then girl, I'm gonna make sure my behavior doesn't negatively impact other people. I would much rather err on the side of respecting another culture than to not. It's a very simple choice. You can make whatever choice you want, but that's the choice I'm always going to make. Or at least that I'm going to try to make most of the time. And if I slip up on it, please let me know, respectfully. But generally speaking, that's what I'm going to err on the side of caution for with most of these episodes. And I'm going to try to call out some weird shit when I see it, okay? I'm going to try to do that. Do my best. Episode 13, From Fear to Eternity. February 10th, 1999. Oh boy, we have one of my favorite demons in this episode. Yay, I love him very much. This episode, we have the Demon of Fear, and that Demon of Fear goes by the name of Barbas, played by the incomparable Billy Drago, may he rest in peace. He has like such a very specific look, and his look reads very much like villain in a very interesting way. Honestly, he's one of my favorite demons. This is an episode that I remember seeing when I was little because it was to do with fear. And I, as a younger kid, had a lot of, and still do, have a fair few phobias that I am not fully over and that I don't know that I'll ever be over. But Barbas, being the demon of fear, makes you think about how you work through your fear. This is one of those episodes I go back to and think about when I'm in the middle of a bit of a panic spiral and trying to figure out, how do I get out of this panic spiral? That's why I like this episode in particular. Spoiler alert, good episode. I fucking love it. We also meet some other people during this episode. We get to see the mother of the Charmed Ones, Miss Patty Hallowell, who's right here. This is her from a picture from a later episode, but that's her. We get to see her later on in this episode. So basically, Barbas comes back on Friday the 13th every 1300 years to kill 13 unmarried witches so that he can be free from the realm that he is in. And how he kills these witches is he kills them using their worst fears, which at the time that he does it also turns their hair white for some reason. Interesting concept. If it was that easy for me to go blonde, I would totally do it. Piper's fear is flying. Phoebe's fear is being trapped in an elevator, or so she says. Prue's fear is drowning, and mine is being trapped in an island with Josh Hutcherson. Or, if Josh Hutcherson looks like this now, he can stay in bed. I wouldn't kick him out. Basically, this is a Prue-centered episode. This is mainly about Prue getting over her fear. And side note, I said that Phoebe's fear was being trapped in an elevator. That is what she lets the girls know, but what it actually is losing a sister, which is a very understandable thing to be afraid of. And that gets used against her later on in the episode by Miss Girl, Miss Thing, Miss Honey, Miss Doll, Barbas right here. Now, the reason Miss Prue is afraid of dying is that Miss Patty, their mom, who's right here, died from drowning when they were very little kids. And ever since then, Prue has been afraid of drowning and also has a very hard time saying, I love you, because the thing that she said to her mom before she died was that she loved her. And it just brings her right back to that trauma. I have said this many a time. These girls, these sisters, I don't know that they've ever received it. They probably haven't, because mental health stigma is fucking abysmal and was even worse so in the literal 90s. So if you got that level of trauma, you might want to consider going to a therapist. I know that's easier said than done, but repression is not going to help you. Ultimately, talking and communicating is the thing that is going to help you, and it's easier to do that with a therapist. Phoebe also gets a job during this episode, but it does come with the caveat that she has to lie to cover up her boss's extramarital affair, which her husband suspects but doesn't fully know, as we figure out later on in the episode. Piper goes on a date that is ultimately very stupid, and it's not with Leo, so I obviously don't support it. Prue manages to defeat Mr. Barbas right here by simply not being afraid. However, he is not dead. He's gonna come back. He's gonna come back not too long from now, too, actually. It's pretty fascinating. This episode is a pretty cool episode, honestly, overall. I like it. I like the character-focused episodes that add depth to the character, where we learn a little bit more about the girls, where we learn a bit more about the sisters. That's what this show's about, isn't it? Like, come on, guys. We need to learn more about the girls. Bring back my girls. You don't have to bring them back. They didn't go anywhere. Whatever. You understand my point. The girls, the divas, the dolls, they are amazing, and I love getting to learn more about them, and I think this is a pretty cool, nifty episode because it allows us to get to know more about the girls and what makes them tick, psychologically speaking. This is also the point where I begin to like and understand Miss Prue a lot more, particularly this episode, and the next one that we're going to talk about, which is episode 14, Secrets and Guys, February 17th, 1999. This episode came out a month before I turned 9. Fun fact, exactly a month before I turned 9. I'm a Pisces. This episode right here, we did a watch-along for this episode that is already up and posted, and I know it's already up and posted because I'm literally wearing the exact same outfit that I was wearing in the watch-along because I recorded it right before I recorded this. Anyway, that episode is up there. This is an episode that I initially missed on my first watch through of the show, but it's one that I really like. I really love this episode a lot. It's very interesting. and very fascinating and very sweet. And the ending of the episode makes me cry a little bit. And, oh, it's a lot. All right, so I'm going to keep this brief because I did do a watch along and I highly recommend you go see it. It's a bit long, but hey, more of me isn't a bad thing, is it? Come on. Y'all love me. And with that one, you'll also get to learn a little bit more about my life and also a little bit more, some deep thoughts about some of the stuff that gets brought up in this episode. My favorite thing from this episode is that it is actually pretty cool representation of both what it might be like to be an autistic person. I'll get to that in a second. But also what it's like being different in a family where you're living with someone who is not different. And also, it is proof that people who are assigned male at birth in this universe can be witches. Technically speaking, the existence of warlocks actually already proved that, but it especially proves it here because we get a young black child, a young black boy, as a witch. I love it, as a good witch. This is also the episode where we find out that Leo is a white lighter. And the first person to find out that Leo is a white lighter, Miss Phoebe. Miss Phoebe catches him floating in the air and Leo asks her to keep a secret after she catches him floating in the air, fixing the chandelier. Phoebe is real bad at secrets, and also Leo is trying to break up with Piper because the elders told him to. Side note, in this episode, they're not called the elders. They're not called the elders in this episode. They are, in fact, called the... Oh, God. What is it? They're not called the elders this episode. They're a group of elder white lighters known as the Founders. They clearly cleared that up and just called them the elders. By the end of the episode, Phoebe does wind up telling the girls. The thing is, though, that they do not believe her. They think it's like fantasy and imagination and all of that, which is very convenient so that she could tell them and not have to feel like she was keeping a secret. But you know what? We're here for it. We're here for anything that lets Miss Phoebe get off the hook for telling a massive secret to her sisters. And honestly, I'm glad she did it. I'm glad she did it. Yeah, I said what I said. I'm glad she did it. I'm glad she told him. Girl, I don't know why I just did all of that. That's a lot. That's a lot for this. I didn't mean to do all of that. It's a lot. Anyway, we're moving on. I love the representation in this episode. I'm not going to come back to actually what... This is him, by the way. This is Max. This is our little witch child. Little black witch child. He's really cool. Apparently the actor is no longer acting, and I'm a little bit sad about that because he did a really good job this episode. I hope that his life is going really well. I know things can be really difficult for child stars, and he was in a lot of things when he was little, so I hope that things are going well for him. But he did very well during this episode, and I hope he looks back at it proudly. He was really good representation for that. What I meant by I thought he was good autism representation is that when he uses his powers, which his powers are psychokinesis, which is different from telekinesis, in that psychokinesis is when you can move things that you can't see. And that is what he can do. He can move things with his mind that he cannot see. And when he uses his powers, he closes his eyes and rocks back and forth, which is a thing that as a person with both anxiety and autism that I do on occasion when things just seem like they're going a little bit crazy. And I found that interesting. I don't think that was an intentional thing on the part of the show to have that in there. But hey, I'll take representation wherever I can get it. I think he's a really good kid. I think he's real smart, a real talented little kid. He does come back in the comics apparently because, by the way, there are comics in the future of this show. Very fascinating. Can't wait to read those. That'll be super duper fun. Episode 15. Is there a Woogie in the house? February 24th, 1999. This episode introduces Grams. We love Grams. Grams is pretty great. Penny Hallowell, who's the grandmother to the girls, who basically raised the girls after Miss Patty died. She will show up again in future episodes because, of course, and this time we do see her only in a flashback to when Phoebe was little and saw the boogeyman, but basically the boogeyman is called the Woogeyman because she couldn't say the boogeyman because she was a baby, but whatever. Basically, the Woogeyman is a shadow demon who is banished into the nexus underneath the house, but was freed during an earthquake, and basically the girls have to put him back in there, and this is a very Phoebe-centered episode, which I love. I love Phoebe-centered episodes. They're always pretty interesting, and they explore a little bit more of her character, which I'll be honest, this show doesn't do a whole lot. And during this, she gets to be possessed by the Woogeyman at one point, which is fascinating. I don't know. This is just not an episode that I really think is that interesting. The only thing I like about it is that we got to see Grams, but that's really about it. I didn't really care much for this episode. I don't think it was that interesting. I honestly, in future rewatches, I'm going to probably skip it. Episode 16. Which Prue is it anyway? March 3rd, 1999. Okay. So this episode is a clone episode. Basically, in an attempt to make sure that Prue can protect herself against the Lords of War, she has to duplicate herself because the Lords of War are trying to kill a firstborn witch. It's clear in the episode, but for some reason this episode is one that, like, it's not that important, per se. I'm going to just say it right now. This episode's not that important, except for one thing, which is that Phoebe, because she has a passive power of premonition, she has premonitions, she starts taking it upon herself to learn martial arts, which ultimately comes in handy and helps save the day. And this is the first time that Phoebe starts learning martial arts to, like, help out. And I think that is pretty nifty. This episode is not bad, it is just not important. And in the interest of getting through these episodes a little bit, because even just this recording has been an hour of this recording, and I am exhausted and sweating. So I am going to call it here for this particular part of it. And again, this last part, this last bit where I come back, will be the last recording for the season 1 video. So stay tuned for that, and I will actually put on a fucking face and do a little bit of a look and do something fun for that. Maybe I'll actually put a fucking wig on for that. Girl, who knows? Shit, we'll see. Alright, I'll see y'all in what is going to be 3 seconds for you, but probably like a week and a half for me, because girl, the next week is busy. Anyway, see y'all in a moment. Boom. Yes. Hello, divas. See, I promised y'all that I would give y'all a beat. This is what y'all are getting. This is my common, this is my standard, this is my go-to. So it's just going to have to do right now because ultimately, this is the last day of filming and I have to get this done now. This is a basic-ass beat right now because it is the holiday season, and honestly, I've not had time. I've just simply not had time to get any of the makeup that I've been wanting to get. And I've also upgraded what wand I'm using. I'm using this one. I've decided I'm going to use this one for the day, mainly because this one expands like that, and I like it. It's from Cardcaptor Sakura. We love to see it. Episode 17. That 70s episode. Air date, April 7th, 1999. Okay, this is another time travel episode, divas. Yes, God. Let's dive into the summary of this episode. There's this old dude who keeps showing up to the house. He shows up every single year to leave flowers for Grams, which in theory is like fine or whatever, like a kind old suitor or whatever. He apparently had done it the year before, just right after Grams had died, I think. He always would leave these flowers for Grams, at the doorstep, but he would also always drop the vase when he handed it to them. Some of y'all are smart and some of y'all are catching on as to why this old man might have done that. This year, at noon, he does the same shit and drops the vase, but this time, homegirl Miss Piper over here freezes the whole situation. And then it's, oh shit, I froze him on accident. Oh no. And then homegirl lets it drop. Homegirl lets the vase drop to the ground. But this motherfucker says, oh, oh, Miss Ma'am, oh, no. There were only 5 dings of that clock. It's molecular manipulation, not time manipulation. Because time manipulation is a whole other power, and I guess we'll get to it. And he's like, okay, so that means y'all got your powers, which means that it's time for me to come collect. And they're like, girl, what? And they try to use their powers on him, and he is immune to them because he's got this weird little ring thing. He turns into this guy right here, this one over here. So he ages down into this guy because, surprise, surprise, motherfucker's a warlock. So basically, the girls go upstairs and they get to the room, the attic, naturally. And they are like, okay, so we need to go back to the time that this guy got whatever his immunity is that he has to our powers that he got from their mother. He tries to get at them, and they do a spell, and they think the spell doesn't work because they're just in the attic. That's all. They're just in the attic. And then they start to hear voices. They start to hear voices coming from downstairs, and those voices are themselves as children. To be clear, they've gone back to the year, it was either 1974 or 1975. They say in the notes, but I apparently didn't take a note on that. Whatever, it's fine. So they go back and they see themselves, at least Prue and Piper see themselves as small children. So they see their mother, they see Phoebe, or Fetus Phoebe, because their mother is pregnant. She doesn't at this point know that she's pregnant. Also, they meet Grams. They see good old Grams, and Grams is powerful. Grams throws all 3 of them out of the house. Okay, so their mama, right there, has a premonition, which is wild, because that was not the power that she had, and she'd never had them before. And what that comes to mean is, obviously, she's pregnant with little Miss Phoebe, who apparently already has her powers, which is a little odd to me, as it feels like a weird pro-life some shit. Yeah, I don't know. I don't like the pro-life implications of this episode, personally. There are a couple of them, but, like, whatever. We'll just leave it alone. I ain't trying to get that political about this particular episode. I don't know that I necessarily buy the fact that, oh, this witch is going to have these powers that early when the brain hasn't even been formed yet. That just feels odd. There's not really receptors for anything yet. This is not the only time this is going to happen. Mild spoiler alert, this is going to happen in later seasons as well. I know that I've said this with this. I'm not trying to spoil anything. That's just not what I want to do as I'm making these. I don't want to spoil things. I don't want to spoil things, just generally. I'm going to try my best not to, but there are certain things that we're just going to have to touch on. We're just going to have to do that, and I'm sorry. And this is one of those moments where we're going to have to talk about the fact that, yeah, this is an ongoing thing that they do a lot that's going to keep happening. They also noticed that the girls, the young versions of the girls, had their powers when they were younger, which I think is interesting. And basically what Grams and Patty planned on doing was binding their powers so that they would be safe until they were older. Long story short, there's a long set of conversations about the paradox of time travel. Diva, I know you've seen it. I know you already been new about the paradox of time travel. I ain't gonna recap all of that right here. That just, no purpose to that. We're gonna just move along from that. Basically, Patty put a blessing on that weird little ring that I mentioned earlier that this guy had. Oh my god, by the way, I've not even said the name of this dude yet. The name of this dude right here, Nicholas. Just Nicholas. Just the demon Nicholas. I don't like the besmirchment of the Nicholas name. I rebuke that. No, not okay. Unacceptable, actually. They leave, they manage to pull some hijinks, and they get Miss Patty to undo all of the blessings that she put on the ring to protect that dude from their powers, which includes spell crafting, by the way. So if they were to say a spell to vanquish him, it wouldn't work, and it wouldn't work because he had the little ring on it. He would be immune to any type of thing that they would do against him, which is why they had to go back to the start of everything so that they could undo it. They do all of that, and then they go back to the future, where they run back into this dude again in their front entryway. They look back into the Book of Shadows for a few answers, and they find that Miss Grams over here has left them a slay little spell specifically for killing this motherfucker. They vanquish that motherfucker, and that's the end of the episode. Now, here's the thing about this episode. I like this episode. The reason I like this episode is because I adore Grams so much. I just adore her as a character. I think she's so funny. I also adore Patty. I think Patty is also pretty goddamn cool. These are not the only times that they show up. They show up later, and Graham shows up a lot, honestly, later on. Get used to it. You're going to see her, because she's Grams, and Grams is fabulous. And you can tell, I don't know, you can learn a lot about the girls and about their personality types and about who they are as characters in episodes like this one, where they go back in time, they meet their families. Phoebe has a whole thing where she doesn't have any memories of her mom, and this is a good chance for her to get to meet and talk to her mother. Also an interesting thing for their family to then know, yeah, these girls are going to be okay at the end of the day. Then they're going to, I don't know, there's something about that's really nice. It's also good for the lore. Also, the only version of Andy that I like is the one in this episode, because he was a tiny child during this episode, and he was adorable running around in a little cowboy outfit, and that's so cute. Episode 18, When Bad Warlocks Go Good. Air date, April 28th, 1999. So over this time period, Piper has been attempting to date this dude named Josh, who's not even on the board because I just don't find him interesting, and he's not around for long enough to warrant being on the board. Josh is a non-entity in this particular case. He's important a little bit to the plot. Ultimately, Piper does give in and go on an actual date with this Josh dude. And Prue also gets to kiss another dude this time. Interesting. Prue doesn't get to do that a lot. It's fascinating. Now, the problem with this one is that the dude that she winds up kissing happens to be one of three, count them, 3 warlocks who are, boop, over here. They are a trio of warlocks, but they're a trio of, basically if they all come together and all 3 of them get their powers, they will be as powerful as the Sisters 3. And one of them, the good one, wants to become a priest. This episode is a little bit weird for me, because this episode feels like it has something in it that is basically just biological determinism. And the thing about that is I don't know how that applies to magical beings, but apparently it does. Apparently biological essentialism is just a thing that can apply to anybody in these fucking stories. I don't particularly think that's a great idea, a great concept. I don't really think we need it, ultimately. I don't think it serves any purpose. Then again, of course I would say that. I am a trans woman. But honestly, fuck that. I don't think that biological determinism is something that is all that important in most stories. I think there's ways that you can write around that. And I think that it's sometimes just a really lazy choice that people just put in because they just need a reason for a character to be really good at something, or for a character to lean towards one thing, or to absolve their characters of choices that they've made. So basically, this motherfucker wants to become a priest. His name's Brendan. He's nice enough. He ultimately joins the priesthood, and they vanquish his brothers. That's this episode. There's a lot of fucking Christianity in this show, by the way. There's a lot of Catholicism in this show, which is wild to me. During this whole episode, Andy is real fucking nasty to Prue. because one of the fathers at the church that he went to when he was little fucking dies, or rather not dies, he gets injured. He doesn't die, in fact, he pulls through. But Andy thinks that Prue is hiding something. Girl, she is, but whatever. Fuck the police. I don't give a fuck if they're hiding something from the police. Fuck this man in particular right here. And honestly, high key, fuck Daryl this season too. Yeah, Daryl out here catching strays this episode, but fuck Daryl and fuck this dude. Ooh, girl, where'd he go? Yeah, so Andy's like real fucking nasty to Prue because his fucking priest got like injured or whatever. Anyway, Brendan joins the priesthood, and Prue is not allowed to date him because he's a priest and the vow of chastity or whatever the fuck. Corny, tired, played out, vow of chastity. No. Unless it's chastity play. This episode is not my favorite. It's not the worst ever. It gets a general pass. I just don't like the biological determinism, and I am honestly over the episodes where they wind up in a fucking church. I just don't think there's any reason for these all-powerful witches to wind up in a fucking church. But they do a lot of volunteering for the church, which is wild to me. But I guess a lot of that is why this group of women seems so relatable to a lot of people. Perhaps. Moving on to the next episode. Episode 19, Out of Sight. Air date, May 5th, 1999. Alright, this episode we meet some of the scariest bitches in this entire fucking franchise. The Grimlocks. So the Grimlocks here they're demons who steal the eyesight of children in order to use their good energy to then kill other good people. Honestly, these motherfuckers, the makeup job they did on them is so good, and it's very scary. It's super scary. This episode opens with the girls at a birthday party where Prue catches one of the Grimlocks taking the eyesight of a child that they know, which is super crazy. Prue is not the only one that sees this. The other person that sees this is a reporter named Eric. Here's the thing about Eric. I was going to put a picture of Eric up, and I chose peace for myself. I chose peace. Fuck Eric, but he's not up here because I didn't feel like it. Eric is this reporter for this weird fucking newspaper. Basically, he threatens Prue that he will expose her as a witch and like that he's gonna get proof that her and her sisters are fucking witches, and he's gonna write about them in the fucking paper. So here's the thing, he dies at the end of this episode, and I could not have been more thrilled. This apparently marks a bit of a trend where like people that threaten to expose the girls wind up dead. And honestly, yeah, if you threaten to expose somebody who you think has magical powers, magic might have a fucking problem with that and might do something about it. Magic gon' pull up, okay? Magic gon' pull up. So don't be out here threatening magic like magic ain't gon' pull up. Girl, who's magic? Stupid. Girl, I put on a fucking wig and I become Banshee. Anyway, whatever. So Phoebe goes and visits a man that after a little bit of research they found is another person who vanished from that same park years ago but was able to be found. His eyesight is gone. He has no eyesight anymore, and it was like some indeterminate number of years ago. He gives her all the information that she needs to figure out where they are, because she has a big enough heart to actually believe someone when they tell her a story. And that's this is a really cute episode for Phoebe, and Phoebe being a person who connects very deeply with other people. That's Phoebe's main big strength. That's the thing that she is really good at. It's connecting with other people on a soul-to-soul level, which is super cool. That's one of the reasons I like her. It's one of the reasons I relate to her a lot. The kids wind up being saved. Everyone has their eyesight restored, including the guy that Phoebe went to visit. They kill the Grimlocks. They also, at the end of everything, everyone is cured of their blindness, which I don't like the terminology that I just used. I'm aware of that. I recognize that it feels ableist and it's not great. This show has a track record of not being great with ableism. I will note that this is a show in 1999. Like, most shows at the time were not going to be super great with ableism and things like that, and this is directly just how it is framed, that this magically imposed blindness is cured of these people. I think it is also shown that the older guy was able to live a bit of a more fulfilled life. The thing about a disability is that because of the world we live in, it does make life harder. Does that mean life is worse? No. It just means life is more difficult because the way our world is set up is for the able-bodied. Is that how it should be? Fucking no. Obviously not. I say this as a person with a disability. It would be a lot better if the world actually just was set up to mean that I could participate in it better. That one motherfucker, Eric, dies at the end of this episode. Well, he's murdered by the Grimlocks themselves, which I appreciate. It's the one good thing the Grimlocks fucking did. They might have killed several children and possibly eaten several children. I'm not actually sure on that point. It seems like they also eat children after they murder the good people. Not fully sure on that. Piper also breaks up with that Josh dude. See, remember last time when I told you that motherfucker ain't gonna stick around, so we ain't have no fucking reason to care? Exactly, bitch. That's what I meant. The kids are saved. The kids are returned to where they need to be. The only thing that is not fixed at the end of this episode is a pretty big thing, which is Andy now knows that the girls are witches. Andy has also now seen their powers by the end of this episode. And they end it on a very interesting line, which is just like, where do we go from here? And I think that's a pretty fair fucking question. And rather than answer that question, I'm gonna just jump right into the next episode. Episode 20, The Power of Two. Air date, May 12th, 1999. Ooh, child. This is one of my favorite ones. Favorite's the wrong word. This is one that I liked watching again. So The Power of Two opens with Piper getting ready to go to Hawaii and Prue being a bit of a passive-aggressive bitch to Phoebe for the fact that Phoebe does not have a job, assuming that she doesn't have anything to do during the day. Whereas Prue has a job, so obviously Phoebe has to pick up all the slack in the house. I'm going to just skip to the part later on where Phoebe and Prue have a come-to-Jesus moment about this exact thing, about Prue being passive-aggressive towards Phoebe about her employment situation. Honestly, if you watch only one scene, watch this scene where Prue and Phoebe talk to each other honestly and openly about Prue's resentment of the fact that Phoebe doesn't have a job, or that Phoebe is a bit more free-spirited and has had jobs. We've seen her have multiple jobs and had to leave them at the end of each episode because the situation wasn't a good one. I also don't think it's a good idea to be passive-aggressive to anybody if they're unemployed, because honestly, the job market fucking sucks, and sometimes having a job is worse than not having a job. Sometimes that's literally just true. But at the end of the day, Phoebe's fine. She's doing what she has to do, and also she's living her life. Now, basically, the villain of this episode is this guy, who is a fucking ghost, by the way. There's another villain of this episode. I'll be real, I'm not going to talk about her because she only shows up this one episode. She's just gone and never comes back. Anyway, this dude was imprisoned in Alcatraz. He is a ghost, and he's now seeking vengeance on the people that put him on death row. Which I kind of get, is the thing. I kind of understand why this motherfucker over here decides that the thing that he needs to do is to go after the people that put him on death row and then go after the people who ordered for him to be executed. Because the thing about that type of execution is that it's fucking brutal and that we have no business doing that. Our justice system is far too flawed for the death penalty to be a thing that we are, like, actually confident in doing. The death penalty is not actually good or helpful for anybody in a society where the justice system can get shit wrong and occasionally execute citizens it has no business executing. Fun fact about me for y'all, I used to have a true crime podcast that I hosted with my friend Kiera called Crime in Color. And there was this one episode that we did where we covered the case of this young kid who was executed, one of the youngest people ever put to death for a crime that ultimately, basically, we have no actual confidence, no actual evidence. That kid was actually guilty. He was a young black kid who was convicted by a bunch of white people and then immediately put to death. I personally do not think that particular kid was guilty. That particular episode was really one that really made it hit for me that, yeah, no, we have no business fucking doing the death penalty in this country or anywhere, really, because the justice system is not good at figuring these things out. Admittedly, this ghost is actually, in fact, a murderer, so yes, we do know that he did commit his crimes. We do get that. But also, he was put to death in a gas chamber? Diva, that is... Woo! All of them have been awful. They've all been bad. They're all not good. We shouldn't do any of them. But gas chamber is especially fucked up for historical reasons that I think we are all quite aware of. The only way to wind up killing a ghost, to vanquish a ghost, you have to be on the same plane as it, which means you have to die to do so. Here's the thing, we've also seen that isn't true, that they've vanquished ghosts before, and they've done it other ways, but because they don't have the power of 3 with them to do it, the only additional way that they can do it is to do it on the astral plane, which means that one of them has to temporarily die, and that person who temporarily dies in this episode is Prue. Prue temporarily dies and is brought back to life by Miss Andy, and Andy finally confesses to her that, yeah, honestly, I can't be with you because this magic shit is too goddamn much. Also, fucking Internal Affairs is up my ass about everything. And that's... So, I wanted to mention this here, that Internal Affairs is up his ass about everything. But the thing is, Internal Affairs is not necessarily who you think they are. I'm just saying that they're going to come back. They're going to come back, and we'll talk about it then. I'm going to include a video down below with information about the supernatural cop genre from a series of videos made by the channel Skip Intro. I have been watching their videos a lot more recently. I personally feel pretty confident as a black person living in America that I understand police brutality, especially in the last few years. I understand this topic fairly well. But I like watching videos. I like watching people talk passionately about things. Also, I'll be real, Skip Intro got me because they did an episode on Veronica Mars, and if I was going to do this with anything, one of the things I was going to do it with was Veronica Mars, but I'm going to put up that little bit there so you can go watch that video to learn a little bit more about supernatural cop shows. I think they talk about Buffy rather a lot. This episode is an interesting one. It is an episode that basically just deals with the relationship between Miss Prue and between Phoebe. And they come together as sisters a lot more, and they get along a lot better. They get along better, which is pretty cool. Anyway, this episode is honestly pretty good. Well, this episode is one that I enjoyed watching. I think I said that in the beginning of this, but I enjoy it. I think it's a pretty decent episode. Episode 21. Love Hurts. Air date, May 19th, 1999. Diva, we are so close to the goddamn end. I'm skipping the plot of this episode. I'll be real with you. The plot of this episode is not that interesting, and I want to finish this, and y'all are just going to have to follow along with me. Anyway, so Miss Leo, right here, comes back, and he asks for the sisters to protect one of his charges. Comes back and asks for the sisters to help protect a charge of his who is a future white lighter named Daisy, who is being hunted by Alec, which is not cute. That's not great. Alec shot Leo with a Darklighter arrow, so Leo is dying when he arrives to them. Now, Piper and Prue find out at this moment that Leo is a White Lighter. Phoebe is, girl, I literally told y'all, and I think that is so funny. Basically, the girls have to figure out how to swap powers and then how to learn how to use each other's powers, basically so that Piper can use Leo's power of healing to save Leo. That's what this episode is. And Piper learns that love is the thing that can heal all wounds. Oh, so cute. So precious. I wish I weren't so jaded that I didn't believe that. I'm kidding. I do believe that. But also, I don't. I believe in medicine, actually. I believe in medicine and therapy. But what is therapy if not self-love? What is going to therapy if not self-love and maintenance, if you want to consider that love? We get to the end of this. Andy is suspended from the force after a rather explosive incident with Internal Affairs last episode. He is then followed by Inspector Rodriguez from Internal Affairs, and that is when it is revealed that Inspector Rodriguez is in fact a demon who has been sent by the source of all evil to figure out what the fuck is going on and why so many evildoers are winding up dead. Also, we find out that Rodriguez has one of my absolute favorite powers of all time, which is the Sonic Scream. The Sonic Scream. It is one of my favorite powers of all time. I love it because the Black Canary is one of my favorite heroes. Yes, absolutely. The Black Canary is one of my favorites. Shout out to that one movie. Shout out to the Birds of Prey movie. That movie was great, and y'all let it flop, and I'm never going to not be mad at y'all for letting that flop. It should have done so much better than it did, because it was a very actually good movie. But whatever, fine. Overall, this episode, it is not skippable. There is very important lore. And also, this is an episode for the Pip Leo shippers. Episode 22, season finale. Deja vu all over again. Air date, May 26th, 1999. Girl, this wig is not pleased with me. I keep fiddling with it because it's... Whatever, that's the fun of having a wig. It's fun. They're fun to play with and fun to move around. Ugh. Anyway. So the thing about this episode here, in the interest of time, I decided I was going to record this one as a watch-along. I plan on doing the first episode and the last episode of each season as watch-alongs on Patreon. So for all of these, those are all going to be up there. Well, let's wrap it up, shall we? This is a Groundhog Day episode. Groundhog Day episodes, in case you are not familiar, are small mini time loop episodes. I'm sure you've seen them in various things where at the end of the day, it just resets to the beginning of the day that they were in. That type of thing. So basically that is happening, but with Mr. Rodriguez over here, by the way, he's down here. Mr. Rodriguez trying to kill the Charmed Ones. Within this episode, almost all of them die except Prue. Prue is the only Charmed one that doesn't wind up dying in this episode. However, basically, they figure out how to stop him by basically pushing everything out of time, basically. Pushing all of the interactions they're having out of time. And one of the reasons they're able to do that this time is because Andy, as much shit as I've given him, he does a good thing this episode, which is he does save the girls. However, he does so at the cost of himself. Andy dies this episode, and Prue goes to visit Andy on the ghostly plane, and they get to have a last final conversation. And as they do, and Andy walks into the light and is officially dead, Prue wakes up and they manage to kill Rodriguez by, again, accelerating out of the time loop, therefore defeating Tempest, by the way. The Sorcerer Tempest, who is the time wizard who put them in the time loop situation. Now, Tempest is played by David Carradine. Rest in peace to David Carradine. He died in 2009. Now, they wind up vanquishing Rodriguez by just firing the energy ball that he fired at them back at him. Here's a little gif of that happening right here. Yeah, and that's his ass dusted. So basically, they are able to, after that, yeah, that's basically that. Piper quits the restaurant, and the girls go home, and they talk to each other about how being witches has changed their lives a lot, and whether or not the changes have been for good. They all seem to decide that, you know what, regardless of whether or not the changes are good or bad, they certainly haven't been boring. And Prue closes the door the same way she did at the end of the very first episode. Just giving a little bit of a wink to the door and shutting it. And that's all of season 1, babies. Yes! In conclusion, this is sure one hell of a first season of a show. We've got a lot happening here. We got a lot of stuff that is typical sci-fi fare in terms of shows. We got a lot of interesting dynamics between the sisters. We got a lot of characters who might come back. We established like some of them, like the main primary romance of the show that sort of becomes a constant throughout everything. I love this show. And all the stuff that I love about the show is in this season. Well, almost everything. Almost everything. There are certain things that show up later that I think are also pretty fascinating, and I can't wait to show those to you, and I can't wait till we get there. It's going to be really fun. I am going to try very hard to do this episode, to do the next one of these in 2 months. I apologize that it's going to take 2 months, but divas, I have a job. I have a day job. And until I can somehow not have that or hire editors, it's just going to take me a little bit longer to get through everything. I also am doing a lot of traveling in February, so it might even, technically, the video might not come out until my birthday. Who knows? We will see. From the time that I'm recording it now, which is the end of November, to the time that I'm able to fully record everything, I don't know when it's going to be, but I'm going to try to make it sooner rather than later that you guys will see me again with a new video. So I love you guys so much. Thank you guys so much for watching this video. If you would like to donate on Patreon, you can do. If you would like to follow me on all of my socials, all of them are at Red Black Golden, which is pretty fucking fascinating and fancy. I would love to hear from you there. Please talk to me. I like hearing from people. I like hearing how people found it charmed, how people like this episode. I also, again, want to thank some people for the idea of even doing this. Shout out to my friend David, David M. I believe it's David M channel here on YouTube. Basically, you should see the channel pop up right here. Go check out his channel and all of the stuff that he does over there. He's the one I've been talking to literally this whole time about making this video, as he's the one that I know the closest who has the experience with making a video like this one and how much work it takes to do. Shout out to David for being like my cheer squad. I appreciate you so much. And shout out obviously to Mike's Mike and to Jenny Nicholson and also to Kari Can Read, because they're the 3 channels that I watched this type of video on and really thought, honestly, girl, I can do that. I can do it. Let's go for it. I think I'm taking a bit of a Jenny Nicholson approach to this one in that I'm going a little bit shorter. Also, shout out to Luke Alexander, because I like the Vampire Diaries version 1 of this that they're doing over there, which is super great. Shout out to you, Luke. Luke, you're doing good work. Anyway, I'm going to include links to all of their channels down below. If you guys would like to support me on Patreon, again, it's patreon.com/redblackgolden. Please support me making more of these. If I can hire an editor, honestly, I will do these faster. Genuinely, these will come out faster if I can have someone else edit all of my weirdness out of them instead of me, because I, again, have multiple jobs that I still have to work and that I'm probably still going to work even after this. I want to make more of these videos for y'all. I want to be more of a presence on this lovely platform, whatever, y'all get it. Anyway, be well, be charmed, be blessed. Do as much good for yourself and the world as you possibly can. And of course, stay safe out there. Mwah.